Hello. Good. My name is Jeannie Hall, and I'm the president of the Phoenix Exotic Wildlife Association. That's the group that's putting on this meeting. I have a real quick statement, and I first of all want to let you know we are recording on videotape. It's on video. They're back here in the back, and they are doing the recording. We are also recording on audio tape. Lee Corbridge up here in front is doing that. Selena Michaelis will be coming around during the question and answer period to take a microphone to you so we know that your question is on the tape. Does anybody have any problem with being videotaped or being on audio? Okay. I also have an announcement that was just handed to me. It's rather lengthy, but it's about the quilt that's being raffled. Did everyone notice that quilt out there? It's very beautiful. Okay. Dear winner of the Phoenix Exotics quilt, my name is Judy Jessel. I made this quilt. A new friend, Kathy Freeman Sawyer, asked me to make this quilt for Phoenix Exotics after she bought one I made and donated at another auction. She told me she likes the green of her quilt because her home is made in greens. I made this quilt with her in mind in case it does go to her. This is the 7th quilt I've ever made, so I hope you enjoy this one. Sometimes people like to know the background behind a quilt they get, so I decided to write its history to go with the quilt. Quilts, as well as other forms of art, are always better when not given translations, but I will give you what I thought of as I created this quilt with some direction from Kathy. Phoenix Exotics has its own logo, which I've placed in the center of the quilt's back, one of the requests. I placed it on blue because it would have faded into the background otherwise. I chose the flames because out of the flames came the phoenix. The logo I created into the stitched art. This and the Indian are my designs. The rest are commercially bought. Because the phoenix is a non-physical, mythical creature, total realism for this quilt, to my way of thinking, could lend itself to both mythical as well as real. The phoenix is a symbol of resurrection, rebirth, spiritual growth, strength and energy for life's trials, fire and royalty. Indians are known to dwell with spirits as well as respecting the natural world. Native American and Celtic shamanistic beliefs are strong on animal symbols. These symbols are referred to as totem animals or power animals. I thought this gave me the best use of both worlds. Going with this thought, and I tried to find what I thought would look good as well as fit into what I have learned about the Phoenix Exotics. Traditional Native beliefs explain that a totem animal is one that is with you for life, often an animal with whom you share a connection, either through interest in the animal or your resemblance to or shared characteristics of the animal in question. A power animal or spirit animal is a spirit in animal form that comes through with a specific lesson for you. First and foremost, Native American Indians believed the earth was ruled by wolves and the water was ruled by whales. The first scene represents both rulers. The whale, or orca, is breaching, but the shadow is a wolf jumping. Native Americans represented a water animal for strength, feminine power, fertility, long life, and perseverance, considered by many to be able to defy death. I also think this particular embroidery is really cool to look at. So there you go. I believe the animals that rule should be among those of us who care for our animals with such dedication and devotion. May you have strength and perseverance with all the power available to you. Footprints were used in Native American art to symbolize direction. If you hang this quilt as Kathy requested, then the footprints lead up to the sky in the direction of the heavenly spirits. The Native Americans believed the heavenly spirits to be their strongest. I centered the gorilla for its strength of family and use of its environment. Unlike the human primate, gorillas are known to leave an area so it can regenerate, leaving something for future generations. I'm not a member of the Phoenix Exotics, but I'm hoping the people I am supporting are working towards a similar goal, leaving the environment for future generations. I hope that I am too. The second square is a scene with an Indian in prayer or calling upon the spiritual realm or simply howling. You decide. Out of the smoke from the fire come the spirit of wolves or guide protector to oversee the animals being cared for by the Phoenix Exotic Group and all species of animals. Wolves symbolize family, teaching, cooperation, insight, strength, stealth, leadership, loyalty, freedom, individuality, hidden wisdom, sharing knowledge and wisdom, cunning, hunting, seeking, introspection, listening, and dreams. This symbolism is what I see in the future of all species will come in need. Is what I see the future of all species will come to need. I placed 2 baby lions next to the fire watching the chief. Lions symbolize regality, calmness, family strength, courage, and relaxation. Tigers are quick to act, subtle, and inconspicuous. They symbolize ferocity, royalty, fearlessness, authority, the warrior aspect, a lack of procrastination, and willpower. I wanted the strength of the tiger to be among the group. I think the tiger paw scene stands out the most. Not all animals or things on this quilt were added for meaning. Sometimes I just put it on there because I thought it fit well there. Below you'll find a list of some of the meanings I found for the animals in the quilt. There's a list here. The winner will get to read all that. I hope you find this quilt to be warm. Please wash it in cold water and line dry. The faux fur will not do well with dry cleaning or the heat of a dryer. It was intended as a hanging quilt. You'll find there is a pocket placed in the flames at the top of the quilt for you to use. You can also use this as a throw. Either way, I hope you enjoy it and like it for many years to come. Okay? That's the quilt everybody's raffling off out there. Okay, welcome to the annual meeting. Let's see. Our other board members and staff are listed on this organizing board. You can't see it very well from back there, but we've changed the way we're doing things by putting in more organization, so there's a place for everyone on this board. Most of you have probably seen one of these in your offices. We're changing around to do that, so we don't just have a standard three-officer board. We actually have a working organizing board. At this time, I would like to announce some of the people that we've placed on this board. If you'll stand up when I call your name if you're here. Vicki Winland Taraska, Human Resources Director. Where are you?
Right here.
Yay.
Hello, everybody.
We also have Rhonda Kiker. She couldn't make it. She's our Marketing Director. Sarah Comstock is our Public Relations Director. She could not make it today. Barry Needleman. Did I say that right? Did I pronounce it right? Needleman. Good. He is in charge of our peer accreditation system that we're working on. It's in draft form. Jackie Clacken has taken over charge of memberships. And we have a few other recent postings on there, as you can come up here and see during the meeting when we're not talking. Okay, anything else? Okay, Chris Brown is our MC. He couldn't make it today, so Lee has agreed to take over that job. Lee, where are you?
Good morning. A lot of you folks know me as Doc on the E-list. I'm a practicing veterinarian. My practice is limited to felines only, with the majority of my practice dealing with exotic cats. We also own, Robin and I own, cougars and servals, jungle cats, bobcats, and our, of course, famous Jimmy the Siberian Lynx. I'm sure everybody knows about that. We're a member of Phoenix Exotics for a reason, because we believe in the right to ownership of exotic cats by the private individual. I'm unique in that stance because most veterinarians do not agree with this. I agree with it because the animals are there. We need to provide the quality care for these animals that we can, do the best that we can with what we have available to us. To turn our backs up against that ownership and against those animals that are there at this point in time is irresponsible, in my personal opinion. I'm sure most of you know full well I'm very an opinionated person. I'm not afraid to stand up and say what I believe in. And I'm sure many of you have crossed that. This is a unique conference. It's a unique conference because we're standing here today and we're going to talk about solutions. How can we stop some of the problems that are facing us today? I think that's unique because we've invited people who agree with our stance, and we've also invited people who do not agree with our stance. And I think that is vitally important that we do so. We cannot stand up and say, I have a right because. No longer. We have to look at all the issues, and we have to be able to accept the opinions and the points of what other people have to say and incorporate it into what we believe. My speech today is titled Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, and I've had probably 50 emails, people going, what in the devil is all this about? Real simple. We started out many years ago with the ability of being able to get exotic animals, wildlife, to come and live with us in our homes. Public perception at that point was pretty indiscriminate. I mean, it was basically people were saying, you have a what? How did you get one of those? Do you know where I can get one? We had very few regulations, very few things that were standing in our way, basically being able to have any animal we so desired. It was pretty simple for us to get the animals that we cared for. And animals were plentiful. We could also get them at any way. We also paid very dearly for those animals. It was very expensive. But we also had problems. We had problems in that we had poor nutrition. We didn't know what to feed these animals. So many animals were put on kibbles and bits, thinking that this was going to do the job that necessary. Because veterinarians for years have been standing up saying, feed XYZ diet for these animals which are domesticated, but we're dealing not with domesticated animals, but animals that are wild animals. We also had problems with poor medical care. Veterinarians were in the field and had absolutely no idea as to how to treat these animals. We didn't even know where to go to find out the information on how to treat these animals. And we also, sadly, had no way of finding it out because we were left in the dark. We had a lot of misconceptions being brought about due to those points in between the private owner organizations such as ASA and the veterinary community. And abuse was common. It was common because the majority of the problems that we see in these animals is nutritionally based. And if we're unable to feed these animals properly, these animals are not going to be able to basically live their life out to their full genetic potential. Where are we today? We are seeing more and more regulations coming our way. We're going to see more. Whether we would like it or whether we accept it, we're going to see more laws being passed on all positions from national to state to county to city. And these regulations are being brought about due to our past behavior and our past performance. We can stand up here and say we have the right to do this, we have the right to do that. But the reality of this whole thing is that what we have done is that we have neglected the basics of raising these animals properly. I say, some of us, in a lot of cases, because the majority of the people that are in this room are the people who care, and we've done a good job. But it's the people outside of this room who was not able to get in here to be able to talk to us and be a part of the solution, is the ones that have basically caused a big majority of our problems. We're getting better. The public perception is getting worse because people are now afraid. We have forgotten to take or recognize the stance that these animals are a threat to people who are not used to this lifestyle, who are not used to this type of an animal. People are afraid, and it's been our mistake for not being able to try to stop that fear. It makes no difference whether it's right or wrong. What it makes a difference is that we have to help these people understand why it is we have these animals and that they are not a problem. And the only way that we can do that is by taking specific steps to stop that. Nutrition is getting better. We're getting a lot better. Better than 80% of the problems that we see is nutritionally based. Plain and simple. If you have them on the proper diet, give them enough exercise, these animals will live very comfortably in a very nice lifestyle with us and will not present a danger to anybody around them. The vet care is getting better. We have veterinarians that are out there searching, working hard, trying to find the answers to be able to provide the care for these animals. We are finding also a great, I don't want to call it a force, but it's almost like a resistance because there are many veterinarians that simply, it's an exotic, I want nothing to do with these animals. Before you get these animals, you need to make certain that you have a veterinarian at your disposal for your animals so you can take care of them. That should be done long before we get the animal. Sadly, abuse is common. We still have abuse, and there is absolutely no reason in the world that we should be fighting this problem. So how do we prevent these things? How do we solve some of these things? Again, it boils down to we have to be more aware of looking at the situation we are in today and listening to the people who are against what we firmly believe in. What about tomorrow? Facts are facts. We're going to be regulated. If you don't believe that, you have no business having these animals. We're going to be regulated in every position, every way that we can go ahead and, is that okay? We're going to be regulated in every instance that we can basically face. It's going to come, and we can't stop it. It's going to happen. But the way to be able to do that, to live within regulation, is for us to be able to stand up and say, we recognize there is a problem, and now we're going to find answers to solve this problem. We can do that, and that's what this meeting is all about, finding solutions to make it so that everybody here can still have and work with the animals at our disposal. It's simple, folks. Information is power. The best thing that we can provide and the best way for us to help our animals is to basically learn the information necessary to be able to raise these animals. It's very difficult to argue against the perception of animals if they look bad. If they look like hell and they're not doing well, it's a very simple target for people to come after. If your animals are in good health and they look great, they will do fine. The best physical animal I have ever seen in my life was owned by a private owner. The best facility I have ever seen in my life was owned by a private owner. And the worst case of abuse I have ever seen was at the hands of a private owner. So what makes up the difference of this? What brought about such a great spread of this? And it boils down to lack of information. And also a lack of understanding of the needs of that animal in particular. We're not meeting the needs of these animals. We are not meeting the specific safety requirements that the public needs. And while we believe it's a perceived perception, it's very real to them. 3 years ago, I made a comment on one of the e-lists that I'm sure most of the people here were a member of. And I said that no one touches the animal. I was absolutely drilled over it. People complained, they argued with me and said, how dare you make such a broad statement? Fact boils down to, most of the attacks and most of the injuries that we see today are brought about because the animal got too close to these people. You cannot allow anybody to touch your animals. And the fact boils down to that if we can keep that away from them, we'll be much better off. If a person can touch your animal, you're jeopardizing the life of that animal in every instance. Our past history is going to force us basically into compliance. It's going to force us into understanding that the first thing that we need to do is we need to first start with the animal. We need to recognize the importance of proper nutrition and supplements. We need to increase the sizes of our cages. We need to go from cages to compounds. We need to have regular vet visits. And we also need to utilize proper parasite control. The number one problem, as I said before, is nutritional based. It's husbandry issues. It's what we feed these animals. We need to provide supplements for these animals. They need to be put onto a proper all-meat diet. And you don't have to believe a word I say, but I'll tell you right now, if you want my services as a veterinarian, you will feed an all-meat diet and you will supplement with Oasis vitamins because it makes my job that much easier. You can screw around with all the diets you want, but it's your choice. As I said before, some of the things we've talked about are very simple. The cages, the compounds, self-regulation. We're going to have a talk about self-regulating. One of the points I want to make very quickly, and I know I'm running short on time, is that I want to make it very quickly. We need to establish a peer accreditation system, but we need to do it in such a way so that we are in control of it, not some other organization. We need to be able to walk up to somebody and say, we got a problem. We need to address that. And every one of us needs to get involved in being able to help accomplish that. We need to reach out our hand to organizations such as ASA and AZA, whether we like it or not. Probably the stupidest bonehead trick I ever heard in my life was that baby lion being given to that reporter. And you can sit here and you can I'll cut to the chase. You don't take an animal that's 8 days old and give it to an inexperienced individual and tell him to feed it and expect that animal to survive. It's just that simple. We have a gentleman who decided he was going to raise a tiger in New York City. And if it wasn't for the actions and the work of Larry Wallach, that animal would have been dead because he stopped him from shooting that animal right there in the apartment. He's a private owner. We have our good sides, we have our bad sides. We have a lot of problems. The organizations such as ASA also have problems. We have to face the fact and responsibility of financial responsibility. When we take these animals, we have to be able to sit down and say, we can afford this animal, and we can afford this animal if something happens to myself. So there we are. I haven't given you any solutions. I've just basically told you what's there. The people that are going to follow me are going to be the ones that's going to help try to give you some ideas. And I hope that they can do so. We need to follow up with what we're talking about today with discussion, more on the list, more privately, and more through emails. Do we have a future in this industry? I honestly don't know. But what I do know is that the actions that we do today is going to determine what's going to happen to us tomorrow. You can get involved today, make a difference. Or we can continue doing things exactly the way we've been doing it, and we will all be out of business very quickly. Thank you. When I got my name tag earlier, they says, okay, you can put your name and everything up front. And I says, okay, but where's the target? I know a lot of people here love to take a pot shot at me, so, let's keep it to a minimum. So if there's any questions, please, I ask that you please stand up, give me a couple of questions, I'll be glad to answer it, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. Any questions? Nope? Good. Okay. We do have one change to the format. I hope everybody will take note of that. We will have our 10-minute break, and then where you will see it says Barry Needleman is going to speak. We're going to change that because Dr. Gibbons is going to speak at that point in time, and Barry Needleman is going to take Dr. Gibbons' point at the very last. He will be the last speaker of the day. Please make note of that, okay? So we should be able to get that all taken care of. The next speaker is a very good friend of mine. I made a comment. If you're not going to feed Oasis vitamins, don't call me up. There's a reason for that. Gary makes my job easy. He makes my job easy because he has the best supplement for animals there is on the market. Argue it all you want. I'm sticking by my statement. He is one of the finest forensic nutritionalists in the country. You can't get no better. The Oasis vitamin is formulated specifically for these animals. I consider him a very dear, a very close friend, and the gentleman knows his stuff. So I'd like you to welcome Dr. Gary Pasilla.
Thank you, Lee. And he's not on the payroll, believe me. Thanks for being here. And it's appropriate to be here at a Phoenix convention, because that means rising from the dead. January 6th, I was dead. I was in a severe car accident. I had an out-of-body experience and so forth, and this is my first official act back. So, thank you. Death is pretty easy. It's pretty quiet, calm, but it's the process of getting there that you don't want to go to. So, very appropriate to be here with a Phoenix in mind. So, bear with me. I have some brain damage. People who know me think I've always had brain damage, but I will be speaking about some controversial issues because a lot of the things that we do are controversial in the exotic world. Obviously, I've been involved in exotic animal nutrition probably since the early '70s. And when exotic nutrition was just throw a bone and throw a piece of meat and hope that it lives. I've been involved in major cases throughout the world investigating animals' cruelty and other situations. I have clients in 62 countries. I currently practice veterinary medicine in Brazil and Argentina. And I get to go around in a lot of the jungles and sit around there and watch the animals in the wild, which is a tremendous experience. That is where you really learn about animals, when you watch them in the wild and hear their calls and smell them and see them doing all their neat stuff in the wild. So I've got a lot of practical experience, and hopefully I'll bring you that today. So this guy was traveling this buggy, and he was driving real, real fast, and he goes off the side of the road, and buggy goes off, and he's, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. So he grabs onto his stick, and he's hanging there. And he's hanging on his stick, and he's looking down. Holy mackerel, it's like 3,000 feet drop. And he's hanging there, hanging there, hanging there. And he's yelling out, is anybody there to help me? Doesn't hear anything. Is anybody there to help me? All of a sudden he hears this voice, yes, I'm here. He goes, who is it? Who is it? It's God. Oh, thank God you're here. And will you help me? Will you help me? And God says, will you do anything I tell you? And the guy says, oh, God, I'll do anything, anything you want, anything you want. So God says, let go of the stick. And the guy says, is there anybody else out there? And a lot of times in this industry, we have to let go of the stick. And that's the trouble is we listen to so many people, we get involved in superstitions and how we do things in the animal world. We look at the National Zoo as an example of how to raise animals. And so we look at these, we look at those type of people, those type of individuals to tell us how we're supposed to raise our animals, and unfortunately, they should let go of the stick too, right? It's a heartfelt situation that we have now in the United States. We have a USDA rep here today. I'm not going to pick on USDA, but I want to say one thing. Mad cow disease existed in the United States before this year. I 100% guarantee you that. I was interviewed by 2020, right before 9/11. How many times, Peter? 4 times by 2020, the things I knew about mad cow disease. I had a TV documentary done on me in Florida about what I knew about mad cow disease right before this broke. I work with the CDC about mad cow disease. There's other problems in this industry that are being covered up that you are just starting to hear about. But we in the exotic animal world, unfortunately, we feed a lot of these animals to our exotic animals, don't we? Tigers, lions, bears, whatever. Oh my. And we are really an experimental unit, because let me give you an example of what's going on in this world right now with regulations. I don't know if you know about USDA, it's Federal Regulation 21 Code 589, something like that. You were allowed to feed blood and blood byproducts to animals until February of this year, and now you can't do that because of why? Why is that? Mad cow disease, which the FDA, USDA said was totally safe, right? Oh, well, now we find out, well, it's not safe. And you've got products that you're feeding to your baby animals called Lifeline and some other products that contain high amounts of blood that are really dangerous to feeding to neonatal animals, especially servals and ocelots and all these little creatures that eat this blood in their milk replacer as a young animal. You will kill them. Guaranteed, you will kill them. It might take a year, it might take 2 years, but you will kill them. So these are things that are approved by the USDA and FDA, but unfortunately, they have a large, these people who are making these products have a very large marketing group and large lobbying group, and they push these things through. So be careful of these things. Let me give you another story. These animals that are fed BST, anybody know what BST is? Bovine somatotropin. You know, the dairy farmers in the United States are using a lot of BST, bovine somatotropin, to give to their animals. So they shoot up these cows right before, a lot of times, right before they go to slaughter, because they want to get extra milk out of them. Then you, as an exotic animal person, finds these in your little tubes that you get from, well, I'm not going to mention names, but some of these little tube products you get. And then you're feeding these animals, and the animal's testicles are atrophying, or they're losing weight. Why are they doing this? Well, we did some controlled studies, and that the BST actually has an effect on testicular function in male exotic cats. Isn't that something? So, that's a little bit of the controversial stuff. It'll take you 5 to 10 years before you hear this in the news. Guarantee you'll eventually hear it. We're going to have some fun today because this is Las Vegas, and so we're going to have some fun. I brought balloons and no party girls, though. But if anybody wants to donate that, we could have some fun here. Nutrition. I really appreciate what Lee said about nutrition, because he's right on tap. You know, we are what we eat. You know, that's an old cliche, isn't it? Ooh, things popping around all over. Who could catch? Anybody know how to catch around here? That little girl. Ready? I'm going to throw this to you. You can catch it, right? I'm going to hit the guy in the... Okay. All right. Ah, you can't catch. What's wrong with you? Throw it to somebody else. Oh, you got a guy wants it over there. Throw it to somebody else. It's got a point to this. Throw it to somebody else, Judy. Yeah, he missed it too. He caught it a little bit and he missed. There's a point to this. All right, throw it up here now. Hit. Yeah.
Sorry.
You want to catch?
Yeah. I'm holding it now.
Oh, you want to hold it? Hold it. All right. The point I'm trying to make of this is anybody who caught this caught a disease.
Thank you.
And you're spreading it around. And a lot of times when we have a lot of animals, you have a lot of animals, right? He's a good guy. He's got a lot of animals. He doesn't get the credit he deserves, but he's got a lot of good animals. And what happens is, in our facilities, sometimes animals catch disease, and we don't understand why. It seemed that it was a healthy animal. And what we don't watch in a lot of our situations with our animal feed program is things as simple as GSH levels, GSH, glutathione. It's like, what the heck is glutathione? Anybody ever hear that? No. No. And we feed things like, oh, immune stimulators. Like, why do I want my animal's immune system stimulated? Why? It's a bee sting, right? A bee sting stimulates the immune system. I want my immune system modulated so that it can react. If I throw that at you, see, he's laughing. He caught it. You know better not to catch it because I just told you it was disease. But so he caught it, and his immune system was good. He got rid of it. All right? He got a good GSH level. And a lot of times we feed vitamin E, we feed selenium, right? And I'm going to pick on some vets, and Lee knows I pick on them. But when I used to teach at Iowa State for 6 years, so the vets, interesting breed of people. I always say sometimes when they're dealing with exotic animals and an exotic cat is laying there and its head is chopped off, and obviously you know the head's off of it, and they say, gee, doc, what killed it? Must be selenium vitamin E deficiency. You know, and that's really, a lot of times, that's what they know, is selenium vitamin E deficiency when it comes to nutrition, at least the Iowa State vets. I'm not going to pick on all of them. But what I'm trying to get at is GSH, glutathione, is made in the body with a lot of other components. A lot of it comes from cysteine units out of the meat and some other products. So we have to build GSH up so that when you do have a disease level hit you in the farm, your facility, the animal will be able to resist. That's the point I'm trying to make. And I had a lot of good overheads. Obviously, I can't use a flashlight and show you what they look like, but we'll just talk about them. See? Magic. I'm going to talk about vitamin E, very important for you to understand. There's some websites that are coming out all over the internet. Now, internet is good for some things and bad for a lot of things. And a lot of the stuff that's coming out on exotic animals on the internet is absolutely trash. And I took the names off of this one so nobody could see, but I'll pass this around if you want to see it later. Things will be flying. But this particular supplement on the internet, you could go see these at any time. I took the names off to hide who it is. But when and you take this to the bank, anytime you see this on the label, do not buy it, okay? And it says vitamin E supplement. You think it's good, right? Vitamin E supplement. You want your animals to have vitamin E supplement, right? No, yes. You want your animals to have vitamin E, right? Yes, okay, we're all, this is like, I think I'm at a Catholic Mass here. Jeez. At least in Catholic Mass, we're kneeling, we're standing up, we're doing this, you know, we're doing aerobics. I preach Sunday morning aerobics. All right. But anyway, I'm also a deacon in the Catholic Church, and I give homilies. So I throw things in church, too. And it's like, oh, no, here he comes, crazy deacon. So I'm ordained. Isn't that weird? Yeah. But I could do marriages. I could work in Las Vegas. But vitamin E, there's a lot of different types. And the USDA allows us to put on, well, AFCO, too,
it allows us to put vitamin E supplement on a label. It does not mean it's the right time for your cat. Lee did an excellent job of saying, well, you know, we can't feed our cats like we feed other species. Most of your cats, if you're buying supplements off the internet and such like that, are fed livestock vitamins, and they're fed a lot of things that are due for livestock. Now, how long does a pig live, usually, in captivity? Not too long, right? Yeah. And how long does a cow live? You know, if it's a cow, you know, little girl, what's your name? Anna, you seem like a smart girl. Cows don't live as long as a tiger, do they?
No, they only live 2 or 3 years.
Good girl, all right. And a lot of times when we look at these vitamins that are being fed to these domestic species, they're not meant to keep an animal alive for 15, 20 years. So you have vitamin E supplement can be one of maybe 6 different types of vitamin E's that are on the market. Alpha tocopherol, beta tocopherol, gamma tocopherol, lambda tocopherol, you know, blah, 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 blah. And what you need is, and I'm not a big Purina fan. I'm really not. But they have I still consult for them though. And their legal side. They had a real good, and their Missouri product for primates. They talk about natural vitamin E. And they make a statement here, and I had this on an overhead. Just imagine it's an overhead, okay? This is Las Vegas. Imagine everything. This is one of the best vitamin E's to have on your label. So it says, when checking ingredients, read the fine print. Vitamin E is identified by its chemical name, D-alpha tocopherol. And it's all in the primate diets. Why isn't it in their cat diets? Ask you that. If they're saying that it's the best thing in the world for primates, why isn't it in their cat diets? It should be. DL-alpha tocopherol. If your label does not say DL-alpha tocopherol, you're not doing your cat any good. Or any exotic animal you have here. Why feed a vitamin E supplement if it's not going to maintain GSH levels and so forth? Okay? That's real simplistic. You got the concept? Amen. That's a Catholic term too. Well, a lot of terms. Okay, next thing, keeping with the tradition of Las Vegas, you never know what I might have to use you in the demonstrations. You know what these are? Little blocks. Yeah, little names and such. Anybody ever play with these? You're all liars. These are my blocks. You never play with my blocks. Jeez. Yeah, we play with your blocks. No, you weren't in my room playing with my blocks. Oh, all right. Okay, what I want somebody to do is think of these as amino acids, all right? And you know what amino acids are? Building blocks, right? We build things with them, and each of them have tiny little letters on it, and we spell things like, let's say we're raising what kind of animal you want to talk about? Anna, what kind of animal? Okay, let's say we're raising a baby serval, right? And the thing is little tiny baby serval, and it's so cute. And we're raising up on milk replacer. What kind of milk replacer are you going to use? Cow milk? That's black. Cow milk, goat milk, KMR. Do you think that's balanced for a serval?
No.
Absolutely. You guys are right. Interesting that when we start throwing proteins at these baby servals, for example, they have a really unique requirement when they're very young for high lysine levels in their milk. And their carbohydrate is really different than other cats that should be in that milk. So if you give them KMR, or if you give them Esbalac and you don't know that, sometimes, Anna, what's going to happen is they're going to get a little bit of diarrhea on you. And sometimes it's really bad diarrhea. And they start blowing out, and it's really smelly stuff. And you're there feeding it, and you're trying, ooh, it's all over you. And that's a major problem I have with some of these milk replacers that are on the market. They are absolutely garbage. And absolutely garbage because they're trying to get a domestic cat. They're taking a domestic cat milk replacer, and they're saying, Anna, I want you to feed this to your serval. Building blocks, again, proteins are so important. And if you look at some of the proteins that are in some of these milk replacers, they're denatured. And that means that they've been heated up so much that the animal can't digest them properly. Since you're a smart guy and you caught the disease, I want you to spell muscle with that. All right? Toot, 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 toot. Now, first of all, do you know how to spell muscle? All right. That's not how you spell muscle, is protein. But anyway, I know we're short. What? Oh no, we're short. We're very short on. Shut up. We're very short on time, and obviously you're not too bright. So, he can't spell muscle, right? He just told me he can't spell muscle. Now he tells me he can't spell muscle. What is it? But anyway, there's not enough letters in there to spell muscle. And but I was doing this to a bunch of people who spoke a different language, and they spelt it in Dutch. So, and they said, see, I spelt it. You know, what I'm trying to make a point is that a lot of times we buy a meat diet or a diet that says 32% protein or whatever you guys buy, and you don't look at the amino acid level. Like for that serval, as that serval grows within its first years of life, and these are very high lysine level, when it becomes 2 and 3 years old, the whole amino acid level, what it needs is changes because it's more of a productive environment. It starts to make babies, right, and starts to get its body ready, and it's more of a methionine level, and it's got some tryptophan and some other things in there. So you have to watch what's in your bag. What I'm trying to get at is what's in your bag, and I have this really neat tag. It's called Renderer's Choice. You know what a Renderer's is? It's called Renderer's Choice. I'd love to show you that, but it's a 32% protein product that's made out of hair and hooves, and a lot of our products that are on the market for complete diets for animals contain hair and hoof parts in it because it's allowed by law. It's not illegal. And when it says all meat, it's pretty funny stuff. I've had a tube of that wonderful stuff coming out of one of those Midwestern states, and I opened it up and it was full of maggots, frozen maggots. Well, it's protein, great, right? Wonderful stuff. All right. Moving right along. How many minutes do I have? Oh, I can't do that because I've got other speakers. I'm just going to give you some highlights, and then you could take it from there. Now, we talked about some weird things. Okay, Lee was saying how important it is for animals to be protected. Come here, balloon. Who wants to be a little guinea pig for me? So now I could be in like Disneyland, Mickey Mouse. You know, it's like, hi, everybody. Okay. Anybody been a guinea pig? Come on. You don't mind. You won't kill me, will you?
No. The husband will.
Here, you have these two big ones. What? I don't get it. What are you laughing at? I just gave her two big ones. What are you laughing at? Who wants a little one?
I'm glad I got the big ones. I didn't want the little ones.
Does he have a little one?
Yeah, give him the
Here. Just pay attention. Okay, now, what a pair. What a pair. That's a loaded question, too. I mean, all right, stand away from her with your little one. All right. Shut up. Okay, sorry. Okay, now we have a disease situation that hits a lot of our cats and or dogs or whatever, or animals in general. These are intestinal villi. Imagine you're an intestinal villi. Behave yourself. Okay, these are intestinal villi. And a lot of times when we have intestinal villi, you know, we were talking to Anna over there about the servals and how they have a little bit of problem with diarrhea if they fed the wrong carbohydrates. But also, if they have these little bacteria coming along and they attach, what happens when they attach to the intestinal villi? They cause diarrhea and some other problems. And what are some of the main problems we have with feeding raw meat? Sometimes if we don't keep it under the right refrigeration, salmonella, you know, salmonella, and you name it, right? So along comes the bacteria. Now, this is bacteria. It's here. But you can see that right here we have big protection. We have this person here. She has this little thing, and he has the little thing. And along comes bacteria and goes like this. Okay. Luckily for this intestine, she has she has a lot of protection, and that protection is what we call a natural way. We call it manned oligosaccharides. She was given manned oligosaccharides to protect the digestive system. He had just a little. he had a little bit of these things they call probiotics, just a tiny bit of probiotics. Probiotics protect a little bit. You're great. They protect a little bit, but manned oligosaccharides, wow, do they protect? Because what a mannan will do with a bacteria or a lot of things that have lectin binding sites is it mimics the lectin binding sites and it attaches to it, and she's not affected, nothing. And these are what are wonderful things that we have available for the animal industry now, and so that we don't have to use a lot of antibiotics and caustic things that will destroy the animal's natural ability to heal itself. So we feed, and I highly recommend using anybody who's feeding raw meat diets to use manned oligosaccharides. We call them MOS. And anytime you have an undifferentiated diarrhea, you guys can sit down. Thanks, that was great. And anytime we have an undifferentiated diarrhea, that means a diarrhea that we have absolutely no idea what's causing it, the first thing you want to do is get in there right away and help stop that diarrhea before you call your veterinarian. Because a lot of times we have a small window of opportunity, especially when you're dealing with ancestral small servals. We have a small opportunity right there to prevent a whole wide world blown diarrhea. So you got some hanging somewhere. So this, by feeding manned oligosaccharides, MOS, now you won't find a lot of this in the literature because it's brand new. It's absolutely brand new. And the reason that it's excellent to feed to exotic animals is in nature, they will typically take in manned oligosaccharides by eating gut contents of some ruminant species. They actually take in mannans. So by our wonderful dry diets out there, some of them in our wonderful meat diet, complete diets coming out of one Midwestern state especially, these diets are insufficient to give that animal the natural protection that it needs. So that's another thing that I really want to emphasize. I get what, 5 minutes? Or? Okay. Will I be invited back because I did that or not? Oh. I had some really great overheads. Okay. I thought of this one night, put it together. This is a digestive tract. Most of you guys have exotic cats, right? So it's easier to talk about exotic cats. This is the insides of an exotic cat gut. In the gut, we have what? Intestinal villi, those black things, little holes for absorption. And along comes you, and you have lots of good vitamins and minerals that you bought. And, oh, wow, I've been using this for years. It's just like Chaparral. Okay. You know, by the way, Chaparral's out of business. You know, anybody who hasn't heard that for the last 8 years or whatever. Anyway, I keep on getting calls. Are you Chaparral? No, I'm not. Do you know that chaparral is a poisonous plant that lives in the desert? Anyway, let's take old technology. So we go ahead and we feed our cats. Who wants to feed? Here, you feed my cat. Here. That's balls. Not minerals. All right, he's going to feed our cat the typical way that we've always been taught, livestock stuff, okay? Feed it.
In the here or there? Yeah.
You don't even know what to feed a cat. You want the other end? Let's stick it in. You're force feeding the cat. Now wait a second, you missed its mouth. Oh, okay. And a lot of these conventional type of minerals like oxides. You ever see on a label that says zinc oxide, magnesium oxide, all these oxides? They're very large particles and they're very, very unabsorbable. They just don't go through all the little balls. And the balls don't get absorbed. Now, you want to give your cat water. Okay. This is water. Looks like water?
Yeah.
Okay. Up. That's the other end. He just gave the cat water that he didn't test. You didn't test your water, did you? But you just gave it to him. A lot of times we do not test our water on our facility because why? We don't care, right? It's wet. It's water. A lot of the aquifers in the United States have high levels of nitrates, sulfates, and some other stinking stuff that we don't really need to give our cats. And that in itself reacts with those minerals I just told you about. He actually gave it magnets, okay? For example, for you people in the back. The water will react with the oxides and the sulfates and some of these carbonates and make it so, not chelate is not the good term, so tied up, interreacts, so the cat will not absorb it. So you're giving all these vitamins, yet the cat is making very expensive manure. So, and a lot of these vitamins that you do buy and mineral products are very expensive manure. You wind up scraping it off the bottom of your cage. There is so much new technology today in the industry, I have absolutely no idea why companies like the big boys are not using the technology, what we call chelation or proteinase. A proteinate is no more than we take a mineral and we combine it with amino acids so that it's more bioavailable. Just like when an animal eats another animal, they have a lot of great chelated minerals inside that carcass. Now, you got smart. Now you're going to feed it a chelate or a proteinated mineral. Thank you. And immediately, it goes through, oops, some of those other ones came out, but immediately it's absorbed because of the particle size, because of the techniques that are used in absorption. What I have done is I've taken some of these products off the internet, and I'm a forensic scientist and I do a lot of legal work. 50% of my time is doing legal work throughout the world. So I testify in federal court and all the different courts against fraud cases. So what I did was I got a sample of some of these products off the internet by a peace officer. We have a chain of custody. I actually have all the chain of custody. I actually got it into a certified lab, and I have all that information with me. If anybody wants to see some of this stuff, I was going to put it up. But what really frightened me on a lot of these things that everybody's selling over the internet, because anybody can sell over the internet, people who make things in the bathtub, very highly unavailable to your animals, extremely unavailable. Plus, I don't know if you're a fan of brewer's yeast or not, but a problem associated with brewer's yeast in cats is the amount of mycotoxins that are produced in some of these brewer's yeast. And I have actual data derived from some of these products off the internet that show the extreme high levels of mycotoxins, molds, and yeasts that are in the products that you're buying. Now, a lot of the cats get some neurological problems, they get some anorexia, they get some undifferentiated diarrhea, and you can't figure out where it's coming from. Well, I have some great handouts that I'll put up maybe on my website so that you can go to the website, see what we have found, and a lot of veterinarians are not versed enough in mycotoxins to know mycotoxin problems when they see it. Brewer's yeast has been used for years for what? For dogs and cats, for nutrition. And it's very interesting, if you look up brewer's yeast in some of the publications, and some of the people will say, it contains, here, for example, it contains all the B vitamins except B12. It contains 16 out of 20 amino acids. They didn't tell you that with such a little level, it doesn't mean anything. And 14 different minerals. Well, the minerals are so small, it doesn't do a darn thing. Let's take zinc, for example. If you're continually using a zinc supplement that has only zinc oxide in it, the USDA allows up to 30,000 parts per million of lead inside of some of that zinc oxide products that you're feeding. And like I said before, your animals are living 15, 20 years, right? And livestock species are living a very short period of time, and have so well said, what, 2 years, right? So these high levels of lead, arsenic, vanadium, cadmium, all the heavy metals, who cares? They're not watching. But in our cat species or exotic species that last for years and years and years. This is why we do not feed things with heavy metals in it. We do not feed things with heavy metals. And that's something you've got to watch. Just because the tag looks good does not necessarily mean it's good for your cat. I think my time is up, right? I've done enough damage? Okay. Thank you very much. I will be available whenever.
Next speaker on the list is going to be Tim Stoffel, and he's going to speak about philosophy of safety. Tim.
Well, I think I got a little bit of a tough act to follow. That was a pretty good presentation, very interesting. But anyway, I want to speak today on the philosophy of safety, and this is not going to be your usual talk on safety. I could stand up here and says, don't turn your back on your animals. Make sure you've got closeouts. That's not my job. I don't even think I'm qualified to speak on that subject. I only have 2 years' experience as a big cat handler, and I've got a lot to learn myself. Anyway, what I do want to speak about is I want to speak about why we practice safety. What is safety? Why is safety important? How do we develop a healthy mindset of safety? Because there's some real problems with the way that we handle our animals that can be traced back to safety. And there's some very interesting issues about safety that we really need to understand if we're going to fully understand and appreciate some of the stuff that's happening to us as exotic animal keepers. So the goal of this paper is to help you start thinking about safety in such a way as that it will be a course of habit to you. So anyway, the first question that we have to ask, and it's kind of a basic one, is what is safety? And the answer to that is I'm not going to answer the question because I think we all know what it is. That's one of the really, really basic things that we all have to understand. Instead, what we're going to look at is some of the real obtuse aspects of safety, the things that we need to understand about safety that sometimes we don't always think about. The first one of this is real versus perceived safety. Now, some of you, especially if you live around Nevada, know that there's a hysteria going on in the state right now. They're trying to build this place called Yucca Mountain. And everybody's just up in arms, and everybody's going to glow here if they build Yucca Mountain. And they're not here to get involved in a nuclear argument. But the thing is, if these people were to sit down and look at nuclear physics, they would realize that the safety problem is not what they perceive it to be. There are problems, but they're very, very different from what the press would have them to believe. And this is the same thing with us. Something that is really safe may not look safe. Something that looks safe may not really be safe. Well, anyway, the biggest problem tends to be with the things that are safe that don't look safe. And this becomes very important. A very recent example of this was, some of you probably remember the situation with Steve Irwin, where he held his kid close to an alligator. Now the people were absolutely up in arms about this. They thought for sure that, he was killing his kid and abusing his kid and stuff like that. And, the thing is that he wasn't doing anything that, that he thought was a risk to the kid and, something that he had practiced many times. But the public perceived it was unsafe, therefore it was unsafe. And this did not go over well for him, and he's in a lot of trouble from it, but he was, officially cleared of any wrongdoing. Sometimes we have to make things look safe, even if they are really safe. If we've got a good, solid enclosure that looks like something a farmer built in his spare time, somebody's going to walk in and say, that cat's going to get out. That cat, not only is that cat going to get out, but he's going to make a beeline for my kids and make them into lunch. You hear that all the time. I mean, you read it every time there's a story about a problem with somebody's cat. Somebody's sure that cat is going to come out, and that there's a red dotted line on the ground to their kids. That can't, that's a real problem. So sometimes when we do engineering for, especially for enclosures and stuff, for some of our practices, we have to design things to look safe as well as actually be safe. So that's something that we have to look at. Like, for instance, some of you who that I've talked to about design of facilities know that I'm working in my ideal lion habitat as a double perimeter fence. Not because I think the lions are going to get out, it's because if somebody from the general public looking is going to see a double perimeter fence and realize that steps have been taken to make it safe. And the building that, the fencing is expensive, but that fence doesn't have to be that heavy because it's more for looks than it is for actually doing anything. The third part of the perception of safety is sometimes we as keepers develop a wrong perception of safety. We think something is safe when it really isn't. Oh, that cat's never going to get out of that cage. When they notice that there's only one lock and the lock is 20 years old and they had trouble locking it 3 times last week. But they say, no, that cat's never going to get out. We can't let, sometimes we have to, prevent our own perception of safety from getting in the way of things. One of the steps of doing this is that's going to be talked about here is peer review. Have somebody else come in and look at your facility and say what's wrong with it. And that's something, something we all need to do. Let's see. The other thing is there's another thing about safety. There's no such thing as perfectly safe. Now, the county government would like you to certify that your facility is perfectly safe and something won't never go wrong. Well, government sometimes doesn't live in a real world. There's no such thing as perfectly safe. We have to strive for perfect safety, but we're never going to achieve that goal. Okay, so why is safety important these days? I think, again, this is a pretty obvious question, so I'm not going to dwell on this. One is compliance with regulatory agencies. As time is going by, we are getting more and more, because of problems that have occurred, we have more and more regulatory compliance issues. And, some regulatory, stuff is good, and it's good when it's written down. Sometimes we have to deal with unwritten regulatory compliance when people come in and, not knowing the rules, they'll try to make up rules. And you have to be on your guard for that. But at the same time, this goes back to the whole issue of real versus perceived safety. If they come in and look at your facility and everything is tight and the locks work good and there's lockouts and stuff like that, they're not going to say anything. But if your facility looks run down, there's suddenly going to be some unwritten regulatory issues that you need to deal with. So, a good design that looks safe is going to do better when you're having to deal with regulatory agencies. Another thing, of course, is that, we have a lot of problems these days with groups that go around saying that we shouldn't own animals at all, and if they see anything wrong with your facility, even the slightest thing wrong, they're going to say you've got a safety problem. And so this is another reason why we need to practice safety, both real and perceived. Above all, of course, the other one is giving a positive attitude to the public. If somebody is, if you're open to the public, and a lot of you are, when the public comes in, you want them to feel safe when they're going to be there. If they don't feel safe, they're going to want to leave, and they're going to tell people, no, you don't want to go to that place. The cats are going to get out and eat us. But if they go and say, yeah, it was a great time, and they didn't even notice any problems with anything, the best customers are the ones that come out smiling, and that, you've done such a good job that they don't notice any, potential of a problem. Those are the ones that are going to be happy to say, yeah, that was a great place. Let's take our family next weekend. And so it can help you in a business sense, too. Above all, of course, the whole goal of safety is to prevent incidents, and that goes without saying. I don't think that needs any more qualification, but nobody here wants a problem. So anyway, what are hierarchy of safety concerns? What's more important than other things? The first one, of course, is the public. An escape or injury to a member of the public, especially somebody outside your facility, must never happen. Now, I just said a few minutes ago there's no such thing as perfect safety. But if there is such a thing as perfect safety, it's got to be protecting the general public. An animal escaping is never acceptable. And we today especially need to design our facilities and need to follow good practices to make sure that that never happens. And that's something that we're gonna, we have to worry about more and more. And we really, just another thing. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and preach practices, but if you don't have a perimeter fence, build one. That's a real good, real important thing. The second important thing is you and your staff, and this goes a long ways just beyond protecting you. When you're working with the animals, you need to practice good safety yourselves. Different kinds of thinking, different kinds of practices. If you go in with your animals, there's another set of safety rules you have to follow and stuff like that. But most importantly, you need to set an example for the people that work with you, because the thing is, if you talk about a lot of places that have staffs and stuff, every now and then they get everybody together and we're going to have a safety meeting. You don't do this, you don't do this, you do this, do this, do this. The next weekend they go out and they don't do those practices, and so the other keepers see this and they say, well, apparently it's not important because he's not doing it either. So you have to be an example to your people. So if you have a practice that you want followed, you need to be doing it yourself. And the last thing that needs to be protected, of course, is the animal. If you do all the other things right, this will automatically protect the animal from harm. And as much as most of us in here love our animals, we don't want to see anything happen to it. So that's the hierarchy we need to follow. So this all adds up to what do we need to do to develop a mentality of safety that will help us develop good habits without having to sit here and think through, well, the rule says this, the rule says that. You know, we need to have this stuff so it's kind of second nature. And the first thing that you need to do is just, you know, start thinking from a safety mindset when you're around your animals. You know, realizing that nice lion that's rolling on his back for a scratch could suddenly, you know, turn on you, and you've got to. There's nothing wrong with scratching your lion's belly, but you better be ready to, you know, be prepared in case that lion suddenly decides he doesn't want to be scratched anymore. So you can't ever forget he's a lion. The second thing is get your people to think safety as well. You know, if you've got workers or volunteers and stuff, you know, besides being a good example, you need to try to have them develop this kind of a philosophy as well, so that they will, you know, so that they will think safe. You know, another thing is when you look around your facility, constantly look and says, how can this be improved? You know, can I improve the way this latches? Can I improve the way this gate works? Can I improve the way that, you know, this fence is up here? Can I improve the way that we deal with feeding? Can I improve, you know, I can just go on and on with examples about this. And along with this, you need to think, you know, you need to, you know, when you come up with a good idea, and this is probably the hardest discipline of all to develop, you know, if it's a good idea and it's viable, put it into practice, you know, as soon as you possibly can. Don't just let it sit there. Oh, we're going to get around to changing those locks next month. And the next month rolls around and says, oh, we can delay that another month. And one of these days the lock fails, your cat gets out, and somebody gets hurt. So, you know, if you see something that's out of order, try to deal with it quickly. The other thing about this, like in everything else in life, there's a balance, and there's a balance in safety thinking as well. If you get so wound up in thinking about safety, you'll find out that you're not as effective as a caretaker. You know, I'm so worried that my cat's going to hurt me, I don't want to touch him or have contact with him or something like that. You know, or I'm going to have to go through all these procedures before I do this. There's a balance in there somewhere, and it's you know, and every facility is different. There's no two places alike. It's up to you to decide what that balance is. But the point is, don't get too wrapped up in safety. You know, even though it's a very important thing, it's something that you can get wrapped up into real easy, and people that are like that are no fun to be around anyway. And I've actually been accused by that of some other keepers of being, you know, playing it too safe, but all the fingers still there. And the last one, this gets back to what I was saying earlier. There's no, you know, no such thing as perfect safety. Don't expect, you know, don't expect perfect safety, but strive for it. If you make a mistake, if something, you know, hopefully it's just something minor, goes wrong, you know, learn from it. Don't sit there and kill yourself for having made a mistake. Just learn from it and move on. And I'm not perfect either. I make mistakes. You know, we all make mistakes, but the thing is that we learn from them, and we're all going to be better keepers. Again, you know, I hope I haven't tried to lecture you here on practice or anything. I hope that made you think a little bit, though, about safety. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tim. Next speaker is going to be Sue Cranston. She's going to talk about, let's see, sanctuaries, the needs of the future.
I'm a little shorter. I got to bring it down a little bit. First of all, I'd like to thank Kathy for inviting us to come out here and talk to you today. We always appreciate the opportunity to have some of our opinions voiced and hear everyone else's opinions and talks. Before I begin the presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. We're a small sanctuary nestled in the Colorado Rockies. We've only been there since 2000. We started rescuing animals back in 1997 while working for another facility. And it was not a facility that was the greatest in the world, and we had learned a lot of things that we knew were wrong. And we wanted to do it a lot better and do it right. So a few of us got together and started formulating plans to start Indigo Mountain Nature Center. And in doing so, we traveled around the country and saw a lot of sanctuaries. And kind of formulated our plan and came back and put it all together. So today we're, like I said, a small sanctuary. We've got about 40 animals or so, excuse me. We've got a large assortment of high-content wolf dogs, some coy dogs, black bears, and sugar gliders. We've got an extreme gamut there. But our program is entitled Sanctuaries, the Needs for the Future. And before we can really determine what our needs are, we need to talk about what is a sanctuary. You know, our government is trying to figure that out right now for the new Captive Protection Act. All of the organizations have their own definitions. ASA has theirs, TAUS has theirs, I guess ACE has theirs. To me, a sanctuary is very simply a safe refuge for animals that need a place to be. Some are abused, some are neglected, impounded, some just plain not wanted. A sanctuary should be a place that the animals feel loved and well protected and taken care of. Basically, they all deserve a happy, tranquil home. A sanctuary should take each individual animal's needs into consideration, and a lot of sanctuaries just don't do that. With the passage of the Captive Wild Animal Protection Act, as well as all the numerous cities and state ordinances that are changing now, sanctuaries are already seeing a large rise in the number of animals needing a home. So we're also seeing animals that are being thrown away due to our nice throwaway society. Everybody, wants to take a pet tiger or a lion or a serval or a wolf dog or a bobcat home for a pet. They see a cute, cuddly little thing, and suddenly they take it home. Well, it doesn't always work that way. The next thing you know, the wolf dog's tearing apart the couch and doesn't work out as a pet. So we're seeing a lot of them that are needing refuge. With the economy the way it is, we're seeing a lot of them where people are losing their jobs, they're having to move, divorces, whatnot, and animals are really needing a lot more sanctuary now. At a time when the animals really need us most, everybody's bickering amongst themselves. Sanctuaries are pointing fingers at one another. They're calling each other collectors and pet owners and all kinds of situations and problems. And in my opinion, that's just irresponsible and pretty foolish. We all need to work together. I was involved in a big rescue this last year that brought a lot of these things to my attention. I don't want to point fingers at the USDA or the animal control situation, but if all of them had worked together, the whole situation wouldn't have come to a forefront. We had over 70 wolf dogs in the South that needed a desperate home. A woman took them in, did a good job for a number of years, and then for whatever reason, the animals started dying. The USDA was called. She was USDA licensed. They turned a blind eye. Animal control had over 600 calls. They turned a blind eye. And in the end, a group of sanctuaries and individual owners stepped in, took over control of the animals, and now 20 that survived are safe and well provided for. Over 20 of them died due to distemper. So my point is, we all need to really work together. The USDA needs to quit turning a blind eye. There's some inspectors that just don't do the 100% job that these animals need and require. Animal control needs to step in. The state entities need to work together, and we all need to work together with them. We need to have open dialogue. We need to discuss our needs with them and help make the laws and the regulations a little bit better for the animals, or we're going to start having an even larger problem. Those who know me know that I'm not against private ownership at all. In our travels, we saw a lot of sanctuaries that were horrible. We saw a lot of facilities that were just awful. And we saw a lot of private owners who did right by their animals. They had wonderful facilities, and the animals were happy and healthy and had bright eyes and a nice sheen to their coat. They looked good. Yet some of the worst that we saw were some sanctuaries. Some of the biggest that I saw, I was quite depressed about. So, the focus of your meeting here is solutions. I suggest we open up dialogue with the USDA, animal control, all of your state entities, whether it be divisions of wildlife or fish and game or DNR, whatever your state calls their state licensing entity. Better communication is going to go a long, long way. Another huge need for sanctuaries in the future is better networking of the placement of animals. Too few of the sanctuaries work together. They've got their little cliques and they transport animals from one place to another, but they don't work together. This is where you responsible owners need to step in too. There's a lot of animals out there right now that are pets that because of whatever the situation is, animal control has taken them away or your state or your city or municipality has changed its laws, these animals are in need of a home. Well, the sanctuaries don't have to be the only reason or the only solution. You can send animals to good, responsible pet owners. So we need to work as sanctuaries with you responsible pet owners to help get that serval or wolf dog that's been laying on somebody's couch or has had hours and hours of companionship go to an individual rather than take up space in a sanctuary where it's not going to be happy. A sanctuary is not going to always be able to provide it what it has been used to. Too often it winds up being tossed into a concrete cage and it's fed and watered daily. That is not ideal for a pet animal. So it's real important that groups like Phoenix Exotics and other independents or responsible pet owners work together in the placement of animals. If we all work together and we form a placement network where we get animals taken from point A to point B, that animal is going to be stress-free and healthier. And that's the bottom line. We want to do right by the animals. Almost important to the future of sanctuaries is the need for good quality facilities. No discussion on the needs for the future is complete without touching on this. And I personally don't believe that every sanctuary should house hundreds of animals. I'm not pointing fingers at the large sanctuaries. Many of them do a wonderful, wonderful job. But we need to be physically and financially responsible. We shouldn't keep taking in more and more animals just because they need a home. We have to know the word no. That's very hard for many, many people who take these animals in, unfortunately. I can't physically or financially house a bunch of big cats, and I don't intend to. We're nestled up about 8,500 feet in elevation, and it's not ideal for all these cats. We'd have to build heated dens. So therefore, we don't take in the big cats. Places like Keepers of the Wild can have them. I also don't feel it's humane to be taking in some of these animals and just throwing them in to a large pen and expecting them to work it out. What we need is more quality facilities who take the whole animal into consideration. We don't want to just save the animal, we need to save the entire life of the animal. That means we've got to do a good job of enriching its life. And very few sanctuaries out there that we've seen really get involved in that. They throw the animal into a cage, they pet it occasionally, they feed it, they water it, and they walk away. What we've found is by enriching their lives, giving them natural habitat, large spaces to live in, the animals are much, much healthier. Our vets love us for doing that. So in a nutshell, don't go out and try to save everything. If you can only afford and have the manpower to save 6 instead of 20 or 20 instead of 100, that's what we ought to do. We have to learn when to say no. We also need to do a better job of designing our facilities. A lot of facilities that we've seen, they'll have tigers in one spot and a bobcat right next to it, or a wolf right there next to that bobcat. Those animals don't always want to see each other. So we need to do a better job of designing our facilities. We need to think out the whole plan for our facility. We found that very active animals are much, much healthier and do a much better job getting along with one another. We don't have a whole lot of fights. We don't have the bickering going on amongst the animals. So what we have done is design large habitats per pair of animals for social animals. Not all animals want to be held together. You might have a very unsocial tiger or a very unsocial bear. They don't want to be with one another, but they might want to be adjacent to one another. They might want to see a bear close by, but they don't want to be in the same pen with a bear. So we take into consideration what kind of species they are and what kind of groupings are going to be stable. We also do quite a bit of enrichment as far as using food to keep them occupied. The more they have to do, the more hours in the day that they can fill, the better they are going to be, the healthier they're going to be. We try to keep intelligent, inquisitive animals challenged all day long. And this can be as simple as building digging boxes for wolves that like to dig. It can be as simple as putting a pool in for a bear who likes to swim and play. It can be elaborate too. You can use all kinds of mechanical lures and all kinds of things to keep them occupied. But basically you have to keep the animal's needs in mind when you're designing all of this. You have to consider the physical placement, the usable space, the den areas, the food containers, the water containers, as well as drainage areas or getaway areas. Not every animal wants to be seen. So it's important that they have a place that they can go and hide and get away. Now, we're not open to the public, and we don't let anybody come in and just view the animals whenever they want. But many places that are open have the animals right there on display, and they can't get away, and they get nervous at one person or another. They don't always want to be seen. So always consider how your facility is designed. As I said earlier, social animals really need to be housed in a social pack. Have animals like, for an example, wolves or coyotes or bears housed together in kind of a pod so that they can see one another. We like to hide fruits and chopped vegetables and meat throughout the enclosures. It lets them forage. The wolves love to forage and go run their whole territory to find different foods. Keeps them occupied, keeps their minds going. In our bear habitats, we've drilled holes in logs so that they can find berries, and it keeps them occupied all day long. It keeps their minds active. Some other ideas of enrichment are all kinds of toys. To a lion or a tiger or a bear, a piece of bark or a feather or a bowling ball or a Kong, all kinds of things are different toys for them. And then you can rotate them in and out of the enclosure so that they're always new and novel. We like to sprinkle different kinds of scents throughout the facility. Some of our animals' favorites are perfume. You got to be careful when you're sprinkling that, though, because sometimes you get it on you and they want to scent roll you, which isn't always ideal depending on the animal. But we use soy sauce and mustard and ketchup. And, anytime you go to McDonald's or Taco Bell, save the packets that they give you, and you can sprinkle them in the dirt. The animals aren't going to eat them. They're going to scent roll them. Again, depending on the species that you're talking about. But basically, we believe in letting the animals live as close to a normal life as they possibly can. Animals that swim or dig or climb around, we like to provide something for them. Climbing animals, we build jungle gyms with logs. Don't have to be too high so they can't get out. So keep that in mind as you're designing your facility. Also, many people believe in a totally hands-off situation with the animals that are safe. And again, we have a lot of wolf dogs, so we are very hands-on with them. We can take some for walks. We work with them very closely. The human touch, grooming, and things really stimulate them and help them. We don't believe in making animals perform tricks. However, we do teach them specific things. For an example, with our bears, if we need to look at their teeth, we all know bears have a sweet tooth, so you've always got to make sure that their teeth are doing very well. And our vets, when they're there, like to look in them. So we teach them wide, a very simple cue, so that they will open their mouths. We can look in their mouths. We can also squirt medication in there, should we need to. Another need for the future is a stop to the breeding of most sanctuary animals. And I say that because generally, we have no historical information about the animals that come to us. Most of them, there's no background. We don't know if they've been used as a founder of a breeding stock or not. So without that basic health knowledge, without the basic behavioral knowledge of that species or that animal, it's not wise to breed. So we look to the pros for breeding. We don't bother breeding. In fact, all of our animals are spayed and neutered, with a couple of exceptions. Lastly, we need to move away from entertainment and move more into educating the public of the plight of wild and exotic animals. Now, we don't take our animals out to do education. We don't have people coming in to educate them at our facility right now. In the future, we probably will, but right now, I'm not a believer in taking animals out to shopping malls or cocktail parties. We don't give tours at 10, 12, 2, and 4. We don't hire the animals out for birthday parties and for weddings. A lot of sanctuaries do. They call this education, and I don't really think that is. I think we need to stop exploiting the animals in the name of education and really get out there and educate people about the plight of wildlife. Many people involved in sanctuaries have a lot of opportunity to educate people, but they don't do it. Instead, they stand up and they spout, "Don't do this." They're holding a cute, cuddly lion cub or something saying, "Isn't this wonderful? But don't do this." Well, we need to get away from that. We need to get out there and explain why. People aren't that stupid. We need to get out there and explain it takes this amount of money, it takes this amount of work. These are not for everyone. And unless you are willing to take on this commitment, don't do it. And I think that'll go a lot further than don't have wild animals as pets. So we need to really branch out and do a lot more education. That's where a lot of the responsible owners need to step up too and help the sanctuaries, help the educators, so that we all are on one page. Basically, there's no simple answers. I know this is all about solutions, and I don't know what all the solutions are, but I think if we all work together, we'll go a lot further. The animals didn't ask to be born into these situations, and I think we've got to all put our differences aside, get on one page, and all work together, and we'll go a lot further, and hopefully 20 years from now, you folks who want them as pets can still own them and do it right.
A lot of people are standing around fidgeting back and forth. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Please come back in 10 minutes. We've got more speakers that are going to do a good job. Okay, is everybody ready? All right, next speaker on the list is going to be Cat Mills, board member of the Western Allegiance Lupine League. Let's give a hand for Cat Mills, please.
I'm really glad this is a relatively small crowd because I might be able to actually speak without stuttering and doing my normal freezing. Hi, my name's Kat and I'm a wolfaholic. No, wait, wrong room. I am really, really honored to be here amongst so many of the people that are here that I consider my mentors. It's a little intimidating to stand up here and say, hi, I'm a private owner and I have something to say and I have an opinion and you guys get to listen to it. But that's what I'm going to do. I share my life with wolf dogs, otherwise known as wolf hybrids, and I'm a private owner. As half of my babies have come to me through rescue, and there was a time when I thought that rescue was going to be my life work. And then I learned how to say the magic word no. No, please, I cannot take your animal that you have gotten because you don't have the time to train it and take care of it and give it proper nutrition and proper containment, because that's your problem. It's not mine. And what we're here for is to discuss solutions, and personally I think that our solutions are going to have to start from home. Our solutions are going to have to start from each and every one of us here, because we're the ones that know how to do it right. Or at least we're the ones that have enough passion to learn how to do it right if we learned how to do it wrong the first time. I just spent the last 3 months moving from the state that I was born in, of my home from 37 years, to Oregon, where laws seem to be a whole lot more common sense. California is,
You got it.
yeah, okay, the land of fruit and nuts, yes. My specific field of knowledge, of course, is with feral cats and with wolf dogs. I have a little low-content wolf dog who's my co-rehabilitator with feral cats. She helps me raise them. Usually I wind up getting the little orphan ones that get uncovered underneath someone's shed or etc. And Spirit helps me raise them. She helps me raise them by cleaning their little bottoms because I don't want to lick their little bottoms. But Spirit thinks it's a pretty good job, and she's real good with it. I take her everywhere with me. I've taken her to we just got back from the Clicker Expo in Berkeley, and where I was very, very public about what she was. Hi, this is my low-content wolf dog. You mean she's part wolf and she's not going to eat me? No. Yes, she is part wolf, and no, she's not going to eat you because you're not made out of hot dogs. Wolf dogs sort of wind up in a kind of a categoric nowheresville. They're sort of lost in between pit bulls and pumas. And some of the particular problems of wolf dog communities, the problems of the wolf dog community reflect that kind of ambiguity of definition. When I was first presented with the topic of this convention, I have to admit to being pretty intimidated by the scope of what we're trying to accomplish here, exploring solutions. Whew, that's pretty tough. Solutions to what? What exactly is the problem? Well, so it seems to me that this problem is sort of like a hydra. You cut off one head and all of a sudden you find two of them in its place. So I tried to define what the problem was. It's a political problem with overzealous, overprotective, undereducated activists squaring off against the constitutionally guaranteed rights of private citizens. It's an ethical problem with conservation and ecological concerns, with animal welfare concerns, and with, let's face it, the future of species and subspecies at stake. It's a public safety problem with escapes and lack of supervision and carelessness and ignorance creating most of the public perception, which is encouraged by sensationalistic misrepresentation of the facts by untrained or undereducated people. And thus, it's a personal responsibility problem. It's our problem. It's your problem. It's my problem. We have developed a sort of a disposable mindset in which we have assumed that everyone else, that there will always be someone else to take care of our little inconveniences. And it's this last hydra head that I'd like to address. Since I'm not running for any political office anytime soon in the next few decades, personal responsibility is the only thing I can be responsible for. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said in his book, The Little Prince, "Many have forgotten this truth, but you must not forget it. You remain responsible forever for what you have tamed." I use it in my signature line online to remind me that there is a price that must be paid if you choose to share your life with animals, any animals. And I'm not talking specific to exotics. A cat, a canary, a goldfish, if you're not willing to take the responsibility for that life for the rest of that life, do not enter into the contract. Don't get that animal if you're not willing to pay the price. And the price is steep. The currency is your time. So really, the first step begins at home. It starts when we realize how many different ways we have been our own worst enemy. It goes right back to how we learn to treat the animals in our care, whether we are owners, breeders, rescuers, whether we are professional exhibitors, if we are hobby breeders, in whichever manner we choose to share our lives with animals, we, each and every single one of us here right now, starting today, we have to start setting an example, raising the bar of expectations and setting the standards higher. We have to personally, as we are able, prove our detractors wrong. And that is no mean task, because our detractors have a very, very powerful weapon at their disposal called fear. And the only real counterweapon we have is education. People don't fear what they understand, but you can't understand a thing without touching it. You can read all you want on a subject, attend conferences, lectures like this one. All the typical educational methods, but until a person has a close encounter with a well-behaved animal, they are as the blind men describing the elephants. Wolves evoke strong emotion in humans on either side of the spectrum. From phobia to philia, they affect us on our deepest levels. Over the year, I have talked over with quite a few folks, being the shy, retiring soul that I am. And some of the people that I've met have what you might call a downright antipathy against wolves and wolf dogs. A few of these folks, after meeting some well-behaved representatives of good canine citizenship, which you'll hear me speaking of a lot, have even changed their positions. Some haven't, but at least they were pleasantly surprised to find an exception. Good citizens shouldn't be an exception. We need to make it the norm. Now, I know one of the biggest stumbling blocks to that end comes from our very ranks. Wolf dogs have the undeserved reputation of being untrainable, unpredictable, and dangerous. And frankly, I am appalled at how many wolf dog folks feed into that set of myths. On one hand, you tell me how special these animals are, how they are intelligent, problem-solving behavior that they exhibit, how they're really intelligent. And then on the other hand, you're telling me that they're too stupid to learn. Well, it can't be both. That's just not logical. And each generation of puppies that we raise that are produced under this fallacy teaches the next generation that decent manners are not required when dealing with humans. Wolves are highly intelligent, evolved, problem-solving, and opportunistic canines with a rich and ritualistic social system. They're born with rudimentary instincts, and using those instincts are taught by the other members of their packs the more complex behaviors that they need to survive, like hunting. It doesn't come naturally. They're learned, they're taught, they're trained to hunt. And if we can't train our own animals just to do the normal things that one would do with one's companion, such as receive vet care, such as sitting when you're asked to and not lunging at someone's face to give them a kiss? What kind of standard are we setting for all of those people out there that say, ooh, I'd like to have a wolf dog? No, you wouldn't. Not unless you have the time that it takes to do the right thing by the animal. Again, I'm a big advocate, but don't get them unless you're willing to take the time. In the wild, an untrainable wolf is a dead wolf. In domesticity, usually the same rule applies. The wolf dogs who wind up in trouble or euthanized are usually escapees from inadequate containment, were improperly supervised around children, were unsocial, or had behavioral problems that resulted from inadequate training. And all of these things are human-controlled. So is it any wonder that the general public has a lousy perception of wolf dogs? The only ones they see are the ones that are in trouble. Because wolves and wolf dogs teach each other, if we don't provide the proper guidance in the form of some kind of training program, they will, and it will usually be inconvenient to the humans. Without basic training, common, decent manners, how are we ever going to be able to change the public perception of wolf dogs as untrainable wild animals? We have to get them out there in public. And in order to do that, they have to be behaved. They have to have manners. I adopted a girl whose ex-parents didn't do any training for fear of breaking her spirit. She had one trick, shake, and she thought it meant rake, and she did, and it hurts. She was so eager to greet me and so enthusiastic in her greeting, but she had absolutely no self-control. It was a trial to spend any time with her. With me winding up all bruised up like a Georgia peach, she'd try to climb up into my lap when I was standing and didn't have a lap. And the less attention she got, the more frantic she became in her greetings. Well, I had just been reading Karen Pryor's Don't Shoot the Dog, a book I recommend to every single person in this room. And I figured, well, it sure couldn't hurt to try, and I sure couldn't make it any worse. So I pulled out my little cricket clicker and a fanny pack full of cut-up hot dogs, and I set out to teach her sit. I figured that was the easiest one to do, and it turns out that if a dog can't sit up and jump up at you if they're sitting, they can't jump and sit at the same time. And I'm not going to sugarcoat the experience and say it wasn't that it was easy, because it was not easy. It was a big pain in the butt It took me almost a month to get something that looked fairly reliable, and even now she does this little spin and turn before her butt hits the ground, but she gets there. And so for us, it's a win-win situation. She gets her lovin', and I get my woofer kisses, and I still get to keep my outer dermal layer. I mentioned earlier about Karen Pryor's Clicker Expo in Berkeley. The convention's theme was reevaluating the possibilities. And I really, really think we all need to do that here, too. We need to reevaluate the potential and the possibilities that we have in front of us. We have well-kept, well-loved animals in a time when people don't make that kind of commitment. We have the perfect example, and we're not using it because of safety issues like what Tim has brought up. And those are very good, valid problems. And we need to find the solutions for them. I talked with Kathy Sadeo, who works with the Navy in the open sea dolphin training program, with Karen Pryor herself, and with Gary Priestley, who's the behaviorist from San Diego Zoo, where they're working with their cheetah in a very exciting manner with wide-ranging applications on free-range training. That cheetah, for the very first time in its life, ran full out and didn't know how to stop. It was very funny to watch the poor little thing. So he's just barreling down this road, and then he tries to stop, and he went butt over tea kettle. Ooh, stopping, what a concept. He'd never gotten fast enough. He'd never gotten up to speed fast enough to know how to turn on the brakes. I think the possibilities with those of us with particularly intelligent and usually stubborn species are incredible. Clicker training is really hard work for both parties. Okay. Besides good manners, containment is one of those other obstacles to good public opinion. Things happen to all of us. So we need to make positive sure that you have the most secure containment possible for your animal, specific to their needs. It's much easier to do a yard upright the first time and convince your wolf dog existence is futile in their escape plans than it is to fix a weakness in containment. Okay, well, I just did something with one of my high-content wolf dogs that everybody told me I couldn't do. I just drove 1,200 miles, and we camped out in campsites. And he slept in the back of a camper truck with 6 crated cats. He had one accident on the road. My fault. I fed him chicken grease the night before. Stupid, stupid, stupid. And he had one accident when we finally got to the new house. He had a little peeing episode, but this is an animal that everybody says, no, you can't do that with a wolf dog. You can't move him in a truck with 6 crated cats. You can't put him on a leash and go down into campsites and with a motorhome and tie him to the picnic bench and watch the other dogs go by. You can't do that. Tigi says yeah, you can. If you do it right, and if you start early, and if you use standard operating animal husbandry techniques specific to the breed. I really, really think that we need to, I've so lost in all of these notes. I really think that we all, every single one of us, needs to try to do what they can to train our animals so that they can easily get good vet care, so they can be handled, so they can be, and not all animals are going to be able to do that because each animal, just like every single one of us, is an individual. But the ones that do have the propensity to be social butterflies, I think they deserve our time to try to give them the very, very best time of life, quality of life that we can. I think it's their right, and I think it's our responsibility. And thanks.
This is where we're going to make that change. The next speaker is going to be Dr. Robert Givens. Dr. Givens is the USDA Director of the Western Region. We're going to take just a few seconds to put up a screen for him, but again, I'd like you to please welcome Dr. Givens.
While we're warming up, I do appreciate the opportunity to come talk with you folks. Really hadn't been exposed to Phoenix exotics before, and obviously I do recognize some names and faces in the crowd, those of you that are USDA licensed, at least some of you, and obviously a lot of you aren't, and it's a pleasure to be here with this group. Go ahead and go to the first slide, Warren, if you would. Did want to get into just a little bit about what the USDA is. You hear the word USDA thrown around a lot, heard it a lot today. The USDA is one of the biggest departments in the federal government. Does anything from food stamps to food safety. We've got protection from foreign animal diseases, you name it. A lot of it's thrown under the USDA. So there's a lot of different agencies and programs that are responsible for things. What our particular program, and we're a program, not an agency, is animal care, and we're responsible for the enforcement of the Animal Welfare Act and the Horse Protection Act, those two specific laws. And I've got listed there the various facility types or industries that we regulate, and we only regulate certain animals in these facility types. So we regulate commercial animal dealers, and this can be anything from somebody back in Missouri selling puppies to somebody selling sugar gliders out of a pet store. We regulate animal exhibitors, again, a wide range here from large zoos to circuses, dogs catching a frisbee at halftime, anywhere where there's exhibition to the public and there's compensation involved. We also do inspections and regulate biomedical research facilities. Again, only certain animals. These are mammals other than rats and mice. And we also regulate animal transporters, airlines or land transporters or groups that move your animals from the terminal to the plane. They have to be registered with us as well, and we do inspections of those. The law also covers animal fighting ventures such as cockfighting and dog fighting. We don't do inspections of those places because our inspectors don't carry sidearms. So the Office of Inspector General enforces the Animal Welfare Act at those places. We also enforce another law. It's a very small part of our budget, but the Horse Protection Act. There's a group of gated horses that have their own show circuit, and unfortunately a large part of that industry chooses to shortcut a good training process and inflict pain on the horse's pasture and to get them to have high gaits. So we send veterinarians to about 10% of the shows a year to try to detect these horses and basically prosecute federally. Next slide, please. We've got 3 offices. We've got a headquarters in Riverdale, Maryland. Dr. Chester Gibson is our deputy administrator. There's a staff of 4 veterinarians there in Maryland. We've got an Eastern Region office in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that office is responsible for the oversight of operations in all the states east of the Mississippi. And I'm from the office in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we're responsible for all the states west of the Mississippi plus Guam. We've got nationwide 102. Today it's 102 field inspectors across the country. We've got 10 supervisors that are placed throughout the field as well. I try to get them as close to the inspectors as we can so they can help with oversight. We've also recently just added 3 specialists. We've got a non-human primate specialist in the field, an elephant specialist, and a big cat specialist. These folks regulate about 9,000 licensees and registrants. And you can see the breakdown there. The vast majority of those are breeders, and about 90+% of those 4,000 breeder facilities are dog kennels. And the vast majority of those are in the Midwest. We also, just going down the list, about 2,400 exhibitors, 1,150 brokers. These are folks that don't breed and raise what they sell, or not all. They would buy from one and then sell to somebody else. And again, about 1,100 research facilities and 300 transporters or handlers. Out of those numbers, just under 900 facilities have big cats. So we see big cats a lot. The vast majority of the big cat facilities we have are exhibitors. Go ahead, Warren. Next slide, please. Question.
Large felines talking about the big 3 cats, or are you talking about more than that?
What we consider a large felid would be a lion, tiger, leopard, jaguar, cougar. So, again, the vast majority of those that we see at licensees are exhibitors. And again, you've got to look at the whole gamut of what an exhibitor is. A lot of those are at zoos, some are in circuses, some are in sanctuaries that we do regulate, some are just small-time exhibitors, maybe a nightclub back here in Vegas. So a wide range there. There are some dealers as well. I do want to make clear that the question.
What's no license class?
We have 3 license classes that we issue. There's an A license, which is a dealer that's a breeder. So if all that person does is breed and sell offspring, they would require an A license. If either all they do is sell other people's animals, or they do some breeding but do some buying and reselling, they would be a B dealer. And if they're an exhibitor, they would be a C licensee. So we've got an A, B, and a C license.
So I want to be a C. So what are my brain is seeing no license? What are
Let me explain that and see if it clears it up for you. We don't have a license specific for a sanctuary. If all a sanctuary does is hold animals and take care of them, and as you've heard, provide a good environment for them to live in, they don't need a license with the USDA. If, on the other hand, they're involved in exhibition, giving tours for compensation, or taking animals out in commerce, then they would need a license.
take it out of that where they're located? Once you take it out of the area where the sanctuary is, then they would need a license under the USDA?
It depends upon the purpose. If they're taking it to the veterinarian, no, they don't need a license to take an animal to the veterinarian. If they're taking it to a meeting to demonstrate the animal, give an educational presentation, yes, they would need a USDA license.
Same with the private owner.
Private owner, again, unless there's involvement in exhibition or commercial sales, no USDA license is needed. We don't have a license class for that, and we don't issue voluntary licenses. People have asked us, well, I don't really do any exhibition, I don't do any sales, can I get a license anyway? And the answer is no. We don't issue voluntary licenses.
One question I've heard come up is whether or not exhibition deals with strictly showing the animals, or if it has to do with whether or not the person collects the fee.
The question was, I guess, getting to the definition of exhibition, and there's it depends upon how you're classified. Now, for most folks, if there's any compensation involved, it's clearly exhibition, okay? But also, there's for zoos or educational purposes, if the animals are taken out and demonstrated, compensation is not an issue. A license is required. I thought I saw a hand. Boys, lots of hands. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. Now with the new law that the president signed in, if you own an animal as a private pet, it is illegal to transport your animal interstate. But if you have a USDA license, does that help you in any way?
We'll have, and Larry's talking about the Captive Wildlife Safety Act, which passed in December, and obviously that will come about and be enacted once Fish and Wildlife Service writes the regulations. You know, in all honesty, I'm not going to sit up here and say what they're going to write because I don't know. We are one of the exemptions for that amendment, and I really don't know what that will exempt from. If you read what you think, sure, then they're exempted from the restriction on interstate movement.
Right, because when I transport my tiger or anything interstate, I need my USDA license. But now, because of that law, everyone here that's private that doesn't use to exhibit, and they're just taking Whoopi across the line, but Whoopi's a 300-pound tiger. If they don't have that license, they could go to jail.
And again, I'm not trying to be distant here. This is not our department's law. We are not writing the regulations. It's not. We are one exemption under that law. The other exemptions are an accredited sanctuary, and they'll have to define what that is. Another exemption, I believe, is a state institution. I'll get around to everybody. I saw a hand and back's been up a long time.
Yes. How many of the 900 facilities facilities that you have with large feline, large animals are actually zoos? How many of the 900 facilities that you have with big cats are actually zoos?
I don't know.
Okay.
Don't have that breakdown, I'm sorry.
Dr. Gibson, go ahead.
I just want to know if you have a special contact license, a hands-on contact venue. Do you have a special license for that?
The question is, do we have a license class for direct contact? Right, no. And that's an issue for us, obviously. If somebody gets an exhibitor license with one rabbit, and they qualify for that license, they have an exhibitor's license. And next week they go out and buy 3 adult tigers, we have no way of taking that license away except going through the Administrative Procedures Act process and going to court.
I was just curious about people that like take pictures with big cats, like full-grown big cats, and claim that there's a special permit or license that USDA has for handling, for actually allowing the public to touch that cat with that picture. There is none?
There is no special permit, and under our current regulations, the current interpretation, which basically came out of a court decision a couple years ago, juvenile and adult cats, there has to be sufficient distance and barriers. And the judge in that case made it very clear that a leash or an experienced trainer is not a sufficient barrier. So I've only seen one of these venues where it was done through appropriate harnesses that were also humane but safe. And the people approached from the back, and there was some plexiglass that would actually be in compliance with our regulations. But no, there is no special license or subclass of license for that.
Brian Werner from Tiger Link and Tiger Creek. I had 2 things I wanted to touch on. One might answer part of Larry's question. It's my interpretation, I had a legal interpretation presented to me from an attorney concerning the regulations on this new law that was passed. And one of the things, basically what that's done is it's exempted USDA licensees across interstate transportation. Basically, it's just shifted that responsibility back to where, in other words, if a private individual, my understanding is, let's say a person in one state wants to buy an animal, another person's in another state that's selling it. Basically, they have to just facilitate it through a USDA, probably most likely a dealer. It could be a breeder exhibitor because they are allowed to conduct a certain amount of that type of activity, even if it's not their primary. So, in a sense, it doesn't stop the individual from moving the animal. They can facilitate one of the transportation units to move it, it's my understanding.
But you know what it does, Brian? It automatically puts it actually keeps paperwork on where that animal goes now.
Sure, it's being tracked
Right.
some
It's
way,
really attracting.
but I don't think that everybody is seeing it as much as you might think. I don't think it's being aired in USA Today. It's it takes a lot to get information through the USDA's Freedom of Information Act. There is some proprietary stuff that doesn't even get released, and I'm sure Dr. Gibson is aware of that. Another thing I wanted to touch on, though, and I wanted to ask you this question on your no license class for sanctuaries specifically. You say that they're not required to be licensed unless they're publicly exhibiting for a fee. Often, a lot of these sanctuaries will set in place, we only allow members only, for example. And anybody can become a member that day, and they show up at the gate, and they pay this membership fee, and they come in and they get their little guided tour. Now, with Tiger Creek, obviously we're open to the general public. We went ahead and complied because I just think that it's probably the best system we've got to work with, the USDA Animal Welfare Act and the regulations there. But my question is, why is that type of behavior being oversighted and allowed? Because you're either exhibiting or not. A cat doesn't, people, it could be 10,000 members or 400 public people. Exhibiting is putting an animal in front of people for a fee, regardless of how that fee's written off. I mean, we call ours a minimal donation. But, if we were to say we wanted to do it with a membership, then apparently there's other facilities out there that are doing that aren't required to become exhibitors with licensing.
I don't know of any. I won't argue with you that there are. What you're describing is exhibition. It's been upheld in court hearings as exhibition. That's not a way to, that's not a loophole to get around the need for a license.
But it seems to be allowed, it's not being enforced. Is that Just
If you know of areas where it's not being enforced, I mean, we got to have the information to be able to enforce it. I'll be happy to take that information from you, anytime you would wish to give it to me.
Yeah, well, and there's other areas where there's enforcement with regards like perimeter fencing and such, which I'm sure you'll get into later. But, I see a licensed facility and they say, well, we got exempted because we have barbed wire around the top of our cage.
But one thing I would suggest, Brian, is if you've got a question about a specific thing, come to us. I wouldn't necessarily take the word of somebody else that said, well, the USDA said that. That's how a lot of people get incorrect information. Another problem that we've got, good, bad, or otherwise, is real. We've got over 9,000 facilities to inspect. We can't know everything that's going out there, and so we depend upon other folks to tell us when they see something. And so if there's something going on that we need to know about, we would appreciate it if you would let us know specifically. Yes.
Yeah, in the state of California, I have a USDA license for an ocelot, and you're required to have a USDA license to get any exotic animal in California. In other words, you can't use it as a private ownership. It's got to be either exhibited or educational purposes or anything else. The state of California does require you, as one of the requirements, to obtain a USDA license for that animal. So it's kind of state-driven in that category. But I don't know if other states are like that.
I tell you what, they run the gamut. There's a lot of states that will require a USDA, they won't require a USDA license, but if the facility has it, then the state won't use their oversight, okay? And now California, as I understand it, is different. You have to have the USDA, but California also has their oversight of your facility, which is really what is intended to be. The federal requirements are strictly minimum requirements, and if the states want to impose more stringent requirements, that's the state's right, and the folks have to meet those state requirements as well as ours. Yes?
I'm really interested in this sanctuary question, what Brian was describing. I certainly could see where that would be a USDA Class C requirement. But what about a sanctuary that doesn't charge any kind of admission, doesn't charge a membership fee? They simply will give a member or donor, that just happens to be in town from 5 states away, a private tour, or maybe even a school group private tour, but no money. In other words, there's no charge or anything like that. Would you still classify that as having a need for a Class C license? In other words, would you classify that as an exhibit, or is money the key issue?
Money is a key issue now. The school group, I don't know. I haven't had that one come up yet. The other one where you describe, if you've got a legitimate board member, and that's how in our hearings that have covered this, it's legitimate board members that want to come and see the facility versus someone being a member for a day so they can get a tour and give a donation. In the circumstance that you presented, if it's a legitimate board member, then no. That's not something.
I was talking about just a member, like $15 or $20 a year donor. In other words, instead of calling it a member, call it a donor. But you didn't charge that person anything that day. It's just because they happen to be in town. Let's say, they live 5 states away and they're in town and they would like to see a sanctuary. It's not a board member.
Right.
But you're not going to charge that person anything extra for coming out.
If you're getting money by giving tours for people to view your animals, you meet the definition of an exhibitor.
I understand that clearly.
Okay.
It's the other area that's a little, in other words, if there's no money involved.
If there's no money involved, a license is not needed.
Even for a school group?
School group, again, that one I would have to check on, Vernon, and get back with you, because I don't know that one. I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay.
I'd just like to dissect it real quick and then we end on this. But I think Vernon's also, one of the key things he brought up was if this is a member, well, they're a paid member, so money was transferred, then it'd be transferred that day. Just because you allow them to come in and you didn't charge them that day, but they paid $25 to your organization 6 months ago, they're still paying, it's still an exhibit.
Brian, this is not a decision that I made. This is a decision from the court. That's all I can tell you. So what they view as if someone comes and pays it, and it's pretty easy to tell when we see these cases. They've got hundreds of people paying $20 memberships, and appears to be, at least to the courts, a very clear attempt to get around the requirements for a license.
Basically, in the membership, maybe they're allowing people to come and exhibit at their own time at any time or whenever it's convenient for them, so therefore we meet it. But the other thing he referred to in the schools, it was clearly there was a court issue on this in the USDA, in the animal welfare. My understanding, and I can't cite to it without doing some research, but it was my understanding that one of the issues of exhibiting could not necessarily involve money. It could be a media exposure. You could be doing a photo layout or a picture-taking opportunity involving the general, just the press, and that still can be construed as exhibiting if it's put on public display, like People Magazine, for example. So I don't know why a school program wouldn't qualify either, but you know, it's hard.
Well, and there's no requirement for a license if your facility is going to be on the news. If the news is coming out to do a story on your facility or someone else's facility where an animal attacked somebody or something good happened, there's no requirement for a license for a person to be on the news.
But there's an important, though, in this structure is make the distinction between nonprofit and for-profit. A nonprofit facility has donors that give as tax deductible. Now, those people have a right, since they make donations, to come and see what it is that they're donating to. And that's, you're not charging a fee, they're donating to a nonprofit entity. Now, if you're not a nonprofit, I can see where you would apply.
But the main thing is for us, and I understand your logic, but nonprofit versus profit is not an issue under the Animal Welfare Act. Okay, the compensation is the issue. And
okay. Yeah, I enjoy being a pet owner a lot better. I'm not even Catholic, but I'll do that. And, well, I moved from Florida to, I'm not going to tell the state, say the state. Many of you know the state I'm in. I can get a permit, put it in the mail today, and when I get home, I have a permit to go kill a cougar. But I've worked so hard, and I've spent so much money. I'm $350,000. The land is paid for, and I'm working on a zoo. And I've closed 10 roads where they can't get to the cougar spot, kill them. That cost $6.5 million, paid for. I'm not going to tell you who I am. Some of you will get to know me, come and see what we got going on. What I'm confused is, what do I do first, the chicken or the egg? Do I build my enclosures first? Do I get the license first? I mean, my enclosures are not done yet, but I'd like to have the USDA license in my hand. You know, we're living in a world where when a carpenter builds a house and the nail bends, we lose faith in all the nails. We don't lose faith in all the nails. We grab another nail and we hit it with the hammer. We keep building the house. But when one person outside this room that has a cat in New York or whatever hurts it for the people that wants to do it the right way. You know, there's the wrong way and the right way. We're living in that world. We're living in when one nail bends, all the nails are bad. We should live in a world where things are working and not working. So what do I do first? Can I get the USDA license where it's going to take me till the year 2007 to finish my project? Can I have this in the hand, or do I build my enclosures first?
I can answer your question, and you can. I'm sure you'll tell me if I don't.
Or he'll answer it for me.
We typically, and I can't think of an exception right now, we won't issue a license unless we can do a pre-license inspection and it passes all the requirements. And there's no way for us to tell if you've passed all the requirements unless you've got an animal or animals in your enclosure.
Right. So I got a lot of work to do. Everything has to, so your question is, everything has to be completed.
Yeah, essentially, exactly.
What if I have one done, but I'm not ready for the other enclosures?
You can get a license for one enclosure, because everybody builds more enclosures every year.
So for example, I want a bear, but the bear enclosure is going to take me to the year 2007 to get it. But I I've completed the cougar exhibit. So, do I get a license for the bear also? Is it included in the U.S.?
Again, our licenses aren't species specific. Maybe they should be, but they're not. It's a general C, I'm assuming you're talking about exhibition, a C license for a zoo. So you can get that license with whatever animal you have ready to exhibit if you're going to exhibit it. We're not going to, if we know that you're not going to be exhibiting yet, we're not going to issue the license until you're ready to exhibit. Because again, we got to stay away from giving out voluntary licenses.
Excuse me.
Can you?
What happens to the animal that he has without a license?
He's perfectly, as far as the USDA is concerned, he can have the animal. It's the same as being a private owner. He can have the animal. He can do anything except exhibit the animal or sell the animal in commerce.
Yeah. But what if the state, like say he's got his application for his license, okay? He hasn't got it back yet. However, the state steps in. The wildlife, fishery and games, whatever. Okay? They say, well, you can't have that. I don't care about your application, what you got in with the USDA. We're superseding them. What happens then?
Well, my state, if we don't have keepers of the wild in my state, like you have in this state, I would say he's
confiscated. He's gone.
The state law does supersede their federal law. Now, I can tell you in California, what we've done is when we come across one of these scenarios is try to work with Cal Fish and Game, and we've successfully done that before and made it work. But it definitely is on a case-by-case basis, and if the state says the person can't get the animal yet, the person can't get the animal yet.
And then he can't get his USDA because he can't get his animal.
Well, and again, I think in the experience I've seen with this, and California is the only one I can speak to, we've been able to deal with it successfully by working together with the state agencies.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yes.
There have been a couple of situations I've heard of, though, where USDA has granted they've come in, somebody's built a facility, they're ready to get the animal, but they needed that piece of paper in order to get the animal. As soon as they got the inspection, said your facility passes, they were able to get the animal. Why does the animal have to be present in order for you to do your inspection?
It's very difficult to tell if many things about whether the person is meeting our standards if the animal's not there. Our standards are not just about structure and construction or shade or shelter. They're also about feeding, they're about handling, they're about employees. So
can't you tell that by just the fact they've got their shade in place, their food facilities in place, their employees in place, etc.?
Many of those things you cannot tell. We're there. You're at your facility 365 days a year. We're at your facility 3 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours a year, getting a snapshot of what's going on. So no, it's important for us to have as much information as possible if we're going to be able to determine if you're in compliance or not.
Yes. Well, to reiterate California, which is probably the most difficult, is that they will not issue your license to get the cat until you have your USDA. In other words, when you apply for your license in California, you must send your application to the California Department of Fish and Game that you've applied to $10 for the USDA license before they even consider you getting your cat or whatever you're getting.
Right.
So when you get your inspection from USDA, you get your cat in place. It makes it, in other words, it's what comes first, as far as that goes. And it makes it a little bit difficult because in California they definitely try to do whatever they can to prohibit you from getting one of the exotic endangered animals. They will make it as difficult as possible.
And I'm not here to say it's an easy process. It is a difficult process in California, and we work through it.
9 months.
It's what we have to deal with, and we try to work with the state agencies as best as we can to make it work. But again, it's where the laws conflict, the state requirements have to be met.
Had absolutely no idea as to how to treat these animals. We didn't even know where to go to find out the information on how to treat these animals. And we also, and sadly, had no way of finding it out because we were left in the dark. We had a lot of misconceptions being brought about due to those points in between the private owner organizations such as ASA and the veterinary community. And abuse was common. It was common because the majority of the problems that we see in these animals is nutritionally based. And if we're unable to feed these animals properly, these animals are not going to be able to basically live their life out to their full genetic potential. Where are we today? We are seeing more and more regulations coming our way. We're going to see more. Whether we would like it or whether we accept it, we're going to see more laws being passed on all positions from national to state to county to city. And these regulations are being brought about due to our past behavior and our past performance. We can stand up here and say we have the right to do this, we have the right to do that. But the reality of this whole thing is that what we have done is that we have neglected the basics of raising these animals properly. I say, some of us, in a lot of cases, because the majority of the people that are in this room are the people who care, and we've done a good job. But it's the people outside of this room who was not able to get in here to be able to talk to us and be a part of the solution, is the ones that have basically caused a big majority of our problems. We're getting better. The public perception is getting worse because people are now afraid. We have forgotten to take or recognize the stance that these animals are a threat to people who are not used to this lifestyle, who are not used to this type of an animal. People are afraid, and it's been our mistake for not being able to try to stop that fear. It makes no difference whether it's right or wrong. What it makes a difference is that we have to help these people understand why it is we have these animals and that they are not a problem. And the only way that we can do that is by taking specific steps to stop that. Nutrition is getting better. We're getting a lot better. Better than 80% of the problems that we see is nutritionally based. Plain and simple. If you have them on the proper diet, give them enough exercise, these animals will live very comfortably in a very nice lifestyle with us and will not present a danger to anybody around them. The vet care is getting better. We have veterinarians that are out there searching, working hard, trying to find the answers to be able to provide the care for these animals. We are finding also a great, I don't want to call it a force, but it's almost like a resistance because there are many veterinarians that simply, it's an exotic, I want nothing to do with these animals. Before you get these animals, you need to make certain that you have a veterinarian at your disposal for your animals so you can take care of them. That should be done long before we get the animal. Sadly, abuse is common. We still have abuse, and there is absolutely no reason in the world that we should be fighting this problem. So how do we prevent these things? How do we solve some of these things? Again, it boils down to we have to be more aware of looking at the situation we are in today and listening to the people who are against what we firmly believe in. What about tomorrow? Facts are facts. We're going to be regulated. If you don't believe that, you have no business having these animals. We're going to be regulated in every position, every way that we can go ahead and, is that okay? We're going to be regulated in every instance that we can basically face. It's going to come, and we can't stop it. It's going to happen. But the way to be able to do that, to live within the regulation, is for us to be able to stand up and say, we recognize there is a problem, and now we're going to find answers to solve this problem. We can do that, and that's what this meeting is all about, finding solutions to make it so that everybody here can still have and work with the animals at our disposal. It's simple, folks. Information is power. The best thing that we can provide and the best way for us to help our animals is to basically learn the information necessary to be able to raise these animals. It's very difficult to argue against the perception of animals if they look bad. If they look like hell and they're not doing well, it's a very simple target for people to come after. If your animals are in good health and they look great, they will do fine. The best physical animal I have ever seen in my life was owned by a private owner. The best facility I have ever seen in my life was owned by a private owner. And the worst case of abuse I have ever seen was at the hands of a private owner. So what makes up the difference of this? What brought about such a great spread of this? And it boils down to lack of information. And also a lack of understanding of the needs of that animal in particular. We're not meeting the needs of these animals. We are not meeting the specific safety requirements that the public needs. And while we believe it's a perceived perception, it's very real to them. 3 years ago, I made a comment on one of the E-lists that I'm sure most of the people here were a member of. And I said that no one touches the animal. I was absolutely drilled over it. People complained, they argued with me and said, how dare you make such a broad statement? Fact boils down to, most of the attacks and most of the injuries that we see today are brought about because the animal got too close to these people. You cannot allow anybody to touch your animals. And the fact boils down to that if we can keep that away from them, we'll be much better off. If a person can touch your animal, you're jeopardizing the life of that animal in every instance. Our past history is going to force us basically into compliance. It's going to force us into understanding that the first thing that we need to do is we need to first start with the animal. We need to recognize the importance of proper nutrition and supplements. We need to increase the sizes of our cages. We need to go from cages to compounds. We need to have regular vet visits. And we also need to utilize proper parasite control. The number one problem, as I said before, is nutritional.
Hello. Good. My name is Jeannie Hall, and I'm the president of the Phoenix Exotic Wildlife Association. That's the group that's putting on this meeting. I have a real quick statement, and I first of all want to let you know we are recording on videotape. It's on video. They're back here in the back, and they are doing the recording. We are also recording on audio tape. Lee Corbridge up here in front is doing that. Selena Michaelis will be coming around during the question and answer period to take a microphone to you so we know that your question is on the tape. Does anybody have any problem with being videotaped or being on audio? Okay. I also have an announcement that was just handed to me. It's rather lengthy, but it's about the quilt that's being raffled. Did everyone notice that quilt out there? It's very beautiful. Okay. Dear winner of the Phoenix Exotics quilt, my name is Judy Jessel. I made this quilt. A new friend, Kathy Freeman Sawyer, asked me to make this quilt for Phoenix Exotics after she bought one I made and donated at another auction. She told me she likes the green of her quilt because her home is made in greens. I made this quilt with her in mind in case it does go to her. This is the 7th quilt I've ever made, so I hope you enjoy this one. Sometimes people like to know the background behind a quilt they get, so I decided to write its history to go with the quilt. Quilts, as well as other forms of art, are always better when not given translations, but I will give you what I thought of as I created this quilt with some direction from Kathy. Phoenix Exotics has its own logo, which I've placed in the center of the quilt's back, one of the requests. I placed it on blue because it would have faded into the background otherwise. I chose the flames because out of the flames came the phoenix. The logo I created into the stitched art. This and the Indian are my designs. The rest are commercially bought. Because the phoenix is a non-physical, mythical creature, total realism for this quilt to my way of thinking, could lend itself to both mythical as well as real. The phoenix is a symbol of resurrection, rebirth, spiritual growth, strength and energy for life's trials, fire and royalty. Indians are known to dwell with spirits as well as respecting the natural world. Native American and Celtic shamanistic beliefs are strong on animal symbols. These symbols are referred to as totem animals or power animals. I thought this gave me the best use of both worlds. Going with this thought, and I tried to find what I thought would look good as well as fit into what I have learned about the Phoenix exotics. Traditional native beliefs explain that a totem animal is one that is with you for life, often an animal with whom you share a connection, either through interest in the animal or your resemblance to or shared characteristics of the animal in question. A power animal or spirit animal is a spirit in animal form that comes through with a specific lesson for you. First and foremost, Native American Indians believed the earth was ruled by wolves and the water was ruled by whales. The first scene represents both rulers. The whale, or orca, is breaching, but the shadow is a wolf jumping. Native Americans represented a water animal for strength, feminine power, fertility, long life, and perseverance. Considered by men. Okay, anything else? Okay. Chris Brown is our MC. He couldn't make it today, so Lee has agreed to take over that job. Lee, where are you?
Good morning. A lot of you folks know me as Doc on the E-list. I'm a practicing veterinarian. My practice is limited to felines only, with the majority of my practice dealing with exotic cats. We also own, Robin and I own, cougars and servals, jungle cats, bobcats, and our, of course, famous Jimmy the Siberian lynx. I'm sure everybody knows about that. We're a member of Phoenix Exotics for a reason, because we believe in the right to ownership of exotic cats by the private individual. I'm unique in that stance because most veterinarians do not agree with this. I agree with it because the animals are there. We need to provide the quality care for these animals that we can. Do the best that we can with what we have available to us. To turn our backs against that ownership and against those animals that are there at this point in time is irresponsible, in my personal opinion. I'm sure most of you know full well I'm very an opinionated person. I'm not afraid to stand up and say what I believe in. And I'm sure many of you have crossed that. This is a unique conference. It's a unique conference because we're standing here today and we're going to talk about solutions. How can we stop some of the problems that are facing us today? I think that's unique because we've invited people who agree with our stance, and we've also invited people who do not agree with our stance. And I think that is vitally important that we do so. We cannot stand up and say, I have a right because. No longer. We have to look at all the issues, and we have to be able to accept the opinions and the points of what other people have to say and incorporate it into what we believe. My speech today is titled Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, and I've had probably 50 emails, people going, what in the devil is all this about? Real simple. We started out many years ago with the ability of being able to get exotic animals, wildlife, to come and live with us in our homes. Public perception at that point was pretty indiscriminate. I mean, it was basically people were saying, you have a what? How did you get one of those? Do you know where I can get one? We had very few regulations, very few things that were standing in our way. Basically, being able to have any animal we so desired. It was pretty simple for us to get the animals that we cared for. And animals were plentiful. We could also get them anyway. We also paid very dearly for those animals. It was very expensive. But we also had problems. We had problems in that we had poor nutrition. We didn't know what to feed these animals. So many animals were put on kibbles and bits, thinking that this was going to do the job that necessary. Because veterinarians for years have been standing up saying, feed XYZ diet for these animals which are domesticated, but we're dealing not with domesticated animals, but animals that are wild animals. We also had problems with poor medical care. Veterinarians were in the field.
Need to be able to defy death. I also think this particular embroidery is really cool to look at. So there you go. I believe the animals that rule should be among those of us who care for our animals with such dedication and devotion. May you have strength and perseverance with all the power available to you. Footprints were used in Native American art to symbolize direction. If you hang this quilt as Kathy requested, then the footprints lead up to the sky in the direction of the heavenly spirits. The Native Americans believed the heavenly spirits to be the strongest. I centered the gorilla for its strength of family and use of its environment. Unlike the human primate, gorillas are known to leave an area so it can regenerate, leaving something for future generations. I'm not a member of the Phoenix Exotics, but I'm hoping the people I am supporting are working towards a similar goal, leaving the environment for future generations. I hope that I am too. The second square is a scene with an Indian in prayer or calling upon the spiritual realm or simply howling. You decide. Out of the smoke from the fire come the spirit of wolves or guide protector to oversee the animals being cared for by the Phoenix Exotic Group and all species of animals. Wolves symbolize family, teaching, cooperation, insight, strength, stealth, leadership, loyalty, freedom, individuality, hidden wisdom, sharing knowledge and wisdom, cunning, hunting, seeking, introspection, listening, and dreams. This symbolism is what I see in the future of all species will come in need. Is what I see the future of all species will come to need. I placed 2 baby lions next to the fire watching the chief. Lions symbolize regality, calmness, family strength, courage, and relaxation. Tigers are quick to act, subtle, and inconspicuous. They symbolize ferocity, royalty, fearlessness, authority, the warrior aspect, a lack of procrastination, and willpower. I wanted the strength of the tiger to be among the group. I think the tiger paw scene stands out the most. Not all animals or things on this quilt were added for meaning. Sometimes I just put it on there because I thought it fit well there. Below you'll find a list of some of the meanings I found for the animals in the quilt. There's a list here. The winner will get to read all that. I hope you find this quilt to be warm. Please wash it in cold water and line dry. The faux fur will not do well with dry cleaning or the heat of a dryer. It was intended as a hanging quilt. You'll find there is a pocket placed in the flames at the top of the quilt for you to use. You can also use this as a throw. Either way, I hope you enjoy it and like it for many years to come. Okay? That's the quilt everybody's raffling off out there. Okay, welcome to the annual meeting. Let's see. Our other board members and staff are listed on this organizing board. You can't see it very well from back there, but we've changed the way we're doing things by putting in more organization, so there's a place for everyone on this board. Most of you have probably seen one of these in your offices. We're changing around to do that, so we don't just have a standard 3-officer board. We actually have a working organizing board. At this time, I would like to announce some of the people that we've placed on this board. If you'll stand up when I call your name if you're here. Vicki Winland Taraska, Human Resources Director. Where are you? Right here. Yay. Hello, everybody. We also have Rhonda Kiker. She couldn't make it. She's our Marketing Director. Sarah Comstock is our Public Relations Director. She could not make it today. Barry Needleman. Did I say that right? Did I pronounce it right? Needleman. Good. He is in charge of our peer accreditation system that we're working on. It's in draft form. Jackie Clacken has taken over charge of memberships. And we have a few other recent postings on there, as you can come up here and see during the meeting when we're not talking.